Today's universities build themselves as a marketplace of ideas, operating under the pretense that students need to be able to think for themselves upon graduation. But what happens when the minds of our youth are infected with new ideas? College students need a coddling environment. That's why we created Safe Space University.
You have to have some experience that will permanently and completely break a materialist technocratic paradigm.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica show. We are going to be chatting to two past Grimericans here a little later. We got Connor Habib and Gordon White. You guys all know those are pretty popular guys around here, so you guys should enjoy that one. But first, a rare Saturday afternoon recording. The one and only Graham Annoyed Dunlop.
Annoyed? Today?
Yeah.
No, it's a great day. Saturday afternoon. Oh, I was annoyed at that. Is that out of a yellow ducky,
no,
a rubber ducky?
Originally, it was.
Did you disassemble a rubber ducky for that?
It was inside this black thing that was inside one of those tubes that you turn upside down.
Kazoo, right?
Like you turn the tube this way, and it was like, and you flip it back over.
Now you're just melding the whole thing.
Now it's down to this little tiny piece that fits nicely in my mouth.
You could probably get that sounding like R2-D2 a little bit there.
You could probably, yeah. You could practice with it. Maybe I will.
So yeah, it's nice on a Saturday afternoon. The blue sky, it feels like spring.
My arm feels like it's broken, so that means spring's here.
Yeah, it's like 10 degrees and it feels like summer. Like it really feels that warm. I'm in shorts and...
All the snow's almost gone.
It went fast. It went fast, yeah.
Plus 15 will do that. Yeah. So, yeah, we're coming out of the winter thaw. In the igloo, one of the worst winters in a while. Actually, you know what? In the last, 5 years, we've had 2 good winters and 3 winters that were probably the worst in probably 20 years.
Yeah, it's only 10 degrees now. It's not 15.
No, it was 15 on, Wednesday.
Oh, I see, yeah.
It was 15 and fucking windy.
Yeah.
All the snow was gone off the lake in one day.
Yeah. So it's a good day for me. Today marks a special date for me. 9 years.
9 years clean?
9 years clean and sober.
Yeah. You want a bong here?
No thanks. Maybe 10. No, after 10, no.
After 10 you'll eat some mushrooms?
No, will not.
Mushrooms are medicine.
No, I know they are for some, but I don't want that.
I'll just sneak them into some.
Oh, I'm not opposed to any of it, just for healing purposes, but not for me.
Would it be I guess that'd be a big deal if I railroaded your clean streak unwittingly, or do you get or does that not count?
Yeah, it counts. Fuck.
If I put mushrooms on your
Especially
pizza.
if I disappear for a week. I feel weird after eating this pizza. No, I was even just talking to a friend last night, and she was saying that she had a friend that did ayahuasca, and he was 8 years clean and sober, and then he went to his friend's wedding 3 weeks later, and he was like, I felt like a friend had lied to me about ayahuasca, saying it would be okay. And the next thing you know, he's drinking it and just right down. And it's like, well, yeah, that's why I don't want to even mess with it. Well, I mean, I don't know if he's blaming ayahuasca or anything, but it's just, why fuck around with it if it's working, right?
That's right.
So, yeah. But, we've talked about on the show a lot about the benefits of drug use and stuff like that. So
one of our listeners just did his first mushroom trip ever on, I wonder if I can actually get to that from here. I don't have my phone, which means you're going to do a weather modification segment.
What does that have to do with anything?
I don't have my phone. I forgot it in the house.
What does that have to do with me doing a weather modification segment?
Can't ignore you.
Oh, exactly. I love it. I love it. Now you can only ignore me on your tablet.
I could probably ignore you on the tablet. So I'm not going to mention any names, but he said, So actually randomly he had posted a photo of himself and I liked it for some reason. Normally I wouldn't, but for some reason I liked it. I think it's because I seen the name, and
Where's
I know that
this,
he's
on Facebook or something?
Twitter.
Oh, okay.
And I know that he's a supporter.
Right.
So I liked it. And then he messaged me this. I had my first mushroom trip yesterday. I'd only ventured with LSD prior. Had an amazing experience that felt almost prenatal in nature. Enjoy the podcast. Maybe I'll write in a trip report to you too. The photo was fairly soon after I'd come back from tripping.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah, so I wonder if there was someone else that was sitting. I don't think it was him, though. Someone else was sitting on some mushrooms, and they had emailed me in like November.
Like physically sitting on them?
No, like just holding him.
Oh, holding him.
And
I thought you meant maybe
he had emailed me in November,
week.
and I remembered reading it. And I thought I had replied to it. And then for some reason, I just came across that email again. I was searching for something, and I came across that email. And I replied. I was like, did I ever reply to this? And he was like, well, no, you didn't. But I still have the mushrooms.
And you're like, now I know how I feel.
Yeah. So I gave him a nice thing, and I don't think I've heard. Oh, actually, you know what? I think I did hear back.
Can you find it now?
If you keep talking.
Yeah, I'll keep talking.
Do I need a jingle? Are you going to do your weather report?
No. Just keep looking, and I'll talk about mushrooms again. Because we've had people commenting on your Enter the Mushroom episode as well. So
we should start selling that.
If people do the episode, people are saying, yeah, they understand. Like, it was pretty interesting, some of the stuff you talked about in there. So Darren can email people a link to the Enter the Mushroom episode because he took it out of the normal feed. I think he was feeling uncomfortable about it. We just got a new subscriber now?
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And there's another thing too. We did this sort of bonus episode from the cabin a couple weeks back. There was a bit of a shit show. So we did want to make it available for people. We don't want to just put it in the regular feed for new listeners that stumble across the show and think that maybe that's all there is here. And it ended up being a pretty good audio sound, and it was pretty interesting. And if you want that, you can sign up to the newsletter or email us, and we can send you just a link to the free bonus episode. And of course, we really appreciate your support here. We couldn't do it without you. I'm just going to blab on here while Darren looks for this email. There's a whole bunch of ways to support the show, and we're going to talk a little bit about this new thing too, this Google Hangout chat app thingamajiggy that we're in now.
Do you have the jingle? Or do you have the link? I don't know. That's a weird link.
What link?
I could make a pretty link for it, though. So I'll do that actually before this is released. So the link for the chat will be grimerica.ca/hangout.
/hangout? Okay.
Yeah, and then that'll take you right to... Basically, it's just like a giant group. I think there's about 35 people in there now. It'd be cool to get, 100 or 200 people in there, and I just kind of... Instead of a forum, we might have a forum one day, but I figure that's kind of a place. It can be a safe place for Grimericans to go. So you're sitting in an airport, you can hop in there. And the idea is that if we can get 200 or 300 people in there, they're probably, like Graham and I aren't going to be in there all the time. We'll touch in, from time to time and see what the conversation's going. But the idea is that, you guys can all be in there chatting amongst yourselves as well. And, maybe you're sitting in an airport in the middle of the night waiting for an airport, and you pop into the Grimerica Hangout, and there's a couple people from Australia and someone from France that's in there too chatting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's just like an app on your phone. So it's Android based and Apple based, right? And it's just like a little.
And I think you can do it just off a computer as well.
So it's kind of like a WhatsApp type thing a way, but it's Google Hangouts and
And then I think we'll also just use that because we can build a community there. And then the next time, if we ever do something, we tend to do live stuff for special occasions and stuff like that from time to time. And then we'll just offset that as the generic chat group.
Or that'll be another way to reach people live, like Twitter, sort of like.
That's right. Except this
type something.
So it's almost like a little mini Grimerica social media network.
Yeah. Kind of, yeah.
That's only people that listen to the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or their friends.
You can invite anyone by link. If you go up to the settings in the corner, it'll copy a link. You can send to anyone. It's an open invitation. Anyone can invite anyone.
I can see some of our guests being in there too, actually. So we have a lot of guests that actually listen to the show and keep in touch with us regularly.
Yeah, it could turn into something kind of cool for sure.
Right on. So yeah, hi to everybody that's in there right now. There's a bunch of you.
Yeah.
Get some UK posse in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been hearing it's so weird how every once in a while I get emails in a row of UK posse, like all of a sudden.
So it's almost like a little Grimerica fucking Facebook, but with no bullshit. Everyone in there is cool.
Yeah, and there's no ads.
There's no ads. There's no slanted bullshit. Everybody in there is cool.
Yeah.
Feel free to share links, share stories, share pictures, post whatever you want in there. No nudity and no nothing.
No nudity?
Don't get crazy. Don't get crazy. Just email down.
Says the guy who did the mushroom episode.
Yeah.
Don't get crazy.
Well, I just don't want to see it turn into some sort of political fucking gong show or anything like that.
Yeah, actually, you know what?
Every forum everywhere is a political gong show.
No, you know what? That could be something right there. Actually, there could be some boundaries and some
even
guidelines.
Like Lisa was
keep
saying,
the politics out of it.
The one she liked was like the Elephant Journal, and even that has gone completely political now.
Yeah,
and it's like this never used to be political.
Yeah,
but everyone feels that need.
Yeah,
they feel like it's their mission.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, well, you're going to lose half your fucking following.
So keep the politics out of there.
Yeah. Just like we're keeping the politics out of here.
Like we try.
We try. It comes up.
It does, because we talk about the deep state and conspiracies, and eventually, like, politics is going to like overlap with some of that stuff.
Shout out to Natachi. He sticks with us. We still have heated arguments all the time, but they're very respectful.
That's your Twitter buddy? Your Twitter conflict buddy?
Yeah. Yeah, we have good chats too, but we definitely have some conflicts, but it's always very above board, you know what I mean? It's always good when you can argue with someone without it going to name calling.
Exactly.
It seems to be hard to do these days, especially on social media.
Yeah.
So if it degrades to that, I just block people right away.
Yeah.
But no, we can mutually disagree on things without calling each other names or being over it. I think it's something to do with respecting someone's opinion enough. You know what I mean? Not knowing someone's not an idiot.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's not even about that. Just giving people the freedom to have their own opinions.
If everybody
even
could
if
do a little
wrong,
more like that, like
that
seems to be how it was like 10 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
10 or 15 years ago, that was fine. Everyone had different opinions and it was fine. And now it's like, if fuck off.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So let's
support the show.
Yeah.
Sign up for the Hangouts, grimerica.ca/hangout. Go to grimerica.ca/support and sign up for the show, or sign up for a monthly there if you can. Those are always fantastic. You can do one-time donations. I think actually maybe I'll start. We should start maybe what we'll do in a couple episodes, I'll get a list together and we can do a shout out to everyone who's a subscriber now. And then we can do it for new people.
Yeah, if people want us to do that, that's fine.
Yeah. Do you think we should give you guys shout outs or something? I don't know. I just feel like, there's like a 75 or 80 or 100 people that
keep the show going.
Keep the show going completely.
Yeah.
And, you guys do deserve to be, honored in some way, because if it wasn't for you guys, there honestly probably would not still be a show.
No, there's too many fixed expenses and there's too many little variable expenses. Like, well, we want to do a good job, obviously. We started it thinking it would be cheap, but we want to do a good job. But there's cords always going and there's little adapters that you always need. There's all kinds of crap that we need. Plus
time and, we'd like to look at getting a new website again someday, and apps, and all these things cost, seems cheap, and then every little thing you want to do is thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Well, even I was just thinking, I got forwarded Coast to Coast AM's thing, and like I can't even listen to back episodes on that without paying for it, right? Like, so I was going to research a couple of guests on there, and I'm like, I just avoid doing it because
or buying books. We can buy books with that, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So big shout out to those people. Like I say, we'll come up with some way of mentioning you guys or doing a page on the website or something to really honor those people. So maybe if you are on the list and you don't want to be named, you should let us know. We should figure out an anonymity way. Well, there's enough people, supporters.
Yeah, we won't say last names.
The support level is low enough that I can email everybody in like an afternoon. It wouldn't take more than a couple hours to put together an email to all of them.
Well, let's try and avoid that.
Yeah.
So
but if we're going to do something like that, it would be good to know first. You know what I mean? Like, see what their feedback. I think we've asked for feedback before, and you guys just don't say anything.
Yeah. So we wouldn't name your last name. We just say like first name and last initial or something like that, right? Like,
or
Stephen J. Or
let us know what you think.
Okay. Okay.
And,
And then also send in your stories and your trip reports like you have been, and your lucid dreams and your synchronicities, and
oh, that stuff's great.
sightings and experiences and thoughts and feedback. That's GRAHAM at Grimerica.com, spam gram.
H.
And there's Instagram too. I'm on that, and Darren's on the Twitter. What else? The website. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. Follow the links in the show notes. It'll get you to all that.
Yeah. There's a whole list of things to do. Take you less than 10 minutes. Of course, there is the Cabin app. That's also only available to people through the newsletter.
I mentioned that. Yeah.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. When you were looking for your email. Did you find that at all?
No, I couldn't find it.
You couldn't find it?
No, I'll have to. I don't think
this is like every time I ask Darren to look for an email that I sent him that he hasn't read yet. This is what happens.
I'll find it. I'll find it for next show.
And you think I'm less tech savvy. Okay.
Are you going out in the back country?
How'd you know that?
I don't know. It says backcountry users beware. Bears are waking up and they're hungry.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to go backcountry skiing.
You're going to go missing 411.
It kind of does scare me now. Like, I never had that fear before. I mean, I had fears of animals walking around the tent in the night, but now I'm like, what the fuck else is out there?
I'm going to get snatched up and fed to reptilians.
Darren wants to have Pallades on about the 411.
Yeah.
Maybe we could get Justin to help us out on that one.
Yes, that's a good
because
idea.
he's into that.
Yeah, Justin, you're in.
So, yeah, I was thinking about ski touring. I'm sort of slightly obsessed with that right now.
Is that like
just going
on
out
a week-long ski trip?
No. You could do day trips too, but just walking along like ski hiking up the glaciers and then skiing down and stuff like that. And a lot of work. It was a lot of work.
You and Joe?
Just me and whoever. I don't know yet.
I think you're okay unless you're by yourself. Yeah,
that's the thing. I was thinking about going by myself, but you need the avalanche training and you got to carry a shovel with you, and it's pretty serious shit. So.
And you don't want to get snatched up. A couple people just went. They just found their bodies up there.
Where?
Up by Banff or somewhere up in there.
But in the snow?
Yeah.
Really?
I think they had been out snowshoeing.
Really?
They got caught up in an avalanche.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
They're from Boston.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's that time of year. That shit starts getting wet, man. Look out.
Yeah.
But just bring your little shovel. You'll be okay. Text me. I'll come find you. So what do you got? You want to get into your segment?
Yeah, sure, if you want to do that.
Actually, let's do this first.
Oh, you bastard.
UFO quote of the week.
Oh, no. So, yeah, he's succeeded to catch me totally off guard for once. Fuck, I'm not even ready at all.
Nice.
Okay, let's see here. Just going to pick one. You see, so many of these are just... Okay, there's one. All right, so this is the UFO quote of the week. There are in excess of 200 reports of the type that we had down in Louisiana, from people claiming that they have had direct contact with a spacecraft full of aliens. I mean 200 reports from witnesses who are reliable or more so than those people. I don't really understand what that means. I mean 200 reports from witnesses who are as reliable or more so than these people. I'm not counting the reports from the obvious crackpots that have an axe to grind. If you accept them at face value, then you're forced to accept that we have been visited. That was from Dr. John Safko, an astronomer at the University of Southern California in 1973.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice save.
Thanks, buddy.
Now you need the clipboard?
Graham is an all-in believer in chemtrails.
Do you want the clipboard?
Sure. Yeah, just when you're done with that.
Done with what?
The jingle?
Ringtone jingle?
Yeah. And every once in a while I get emails about geoengineering and chemtrails and stuff like that. So I put a couple clips together here, and this is truly a new Manhattan Project video, and this is from researcher Peter Kirby, who put together a 10-minute video, and I've just got a little 2-minute clip of it here, but it's from his most recent paper, Chemtrails Exposed, Truly a New Manhattan Project. And the article in the video cover the new Manhattan Project involvement with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the radiation laboratory there, the MITRE Corporation, Vannevar Bush, Alfred Loomis, Edward Teller, and John von Neumann, and more. So he's talking about the like how far back this goes, right? Like Teller and Vannevar Bush talking about this in the 40s, right?
About geoengineering?
Well, yeah, and atmospheric, the ionospheric heating and stuff like that, and then it gets into HAARP a little bit. But I just have a little 2-minute clip here to play. It's a little bit slow, so just be patient.
Slow?
The ionospheric heaters of today's new Manhattan Project can generate these signals. Loomis was also key to the development of the aforementioned LORAN system, which, as we have seen, was the predecessor of today's ionospheric heaters. Outside of the Rad Lab,
is this guy a
new
robot?
Information about other famous scientists and their ties to the new Manhattan Project has come to the fore. Much evidence suggests that Manhattan Project theoretical physicist Edward Teller was the single most important scientist in the entire development of the new Manhattan Project. He advocated for weather control countless times. He was an early advocate of something called planetary engineering. Planetary engineering is the antecedent of today's so-called geoengineering. A branch of today's geoengineering, called solar radiation management, suggests that airplanes spray chemicals into our atmosphere. In 1962, he wrote as much, stating, quote, "We might spread a cloud of dust over a strategic location," unquote, for the purpose of weather control. To top it all off, he co-authored a series of papers in the mid-1990s suggesting that the Earth and all its biota be sprayed with, guess what, stratospheric aluminum. These papers were published by Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories, which Teller had co-funded and directed. Evidence suggests that Lawrence Livermore Labs is the home of the new Manhattan Project's main control center. John von Neumann was a Manhattan Project scientist who largely invented the field of modern mathematical computer modeling. He developed this field in the context of computer-simulated atomic bomb detonations. He later applied his computer models to weather modification and the atmospheric sciences. His work in this area later resulted in computer-generated weather forecasts. Most curiously, von Neumann appears to be the originator of not only the modern theory of man-made global warming, but also the basis of the solar radiation management geoengineering thesis.
That's interesting. Hey? Apparently the one that started the whole global warming thing, but also geoengineering at the same time. It's like, here, we're going to, say there's global warming and then have a fix for it, all ready to go.
Perfect.
See, the longer we go on here, the more and more we realize that these people were doing geoengineering and thinking of it way back decades ago. So as if it's not being done now. And then I have and it's true. There's like 50 programs in the States doing it above board. There's companies, turnkey solutions of changing your weather, modifying your weather.
Wonder how much it costs.
Not as much as you think.
Wonder if we could get like eternal summer over the igloo for a couple $1,000 a year. Or...
Just donate to the show. So then I came across this other one about it's about the Tennessee skies, and it's got some videos in here of them spraying in Tennessee. Now, I mean, the problem with these things are some of them are contrails, obviously, but some of them I do believe are chemicals being sprayed as well. It's both. I mean, it could be in the gas, it could be in external nozzles. I don't know, but they talk about David Keith is in this one, and he's a scientist. Actually, lives near us in Canmore. Do you remember he was the one that was bitching about that billboard about chemtrails?
Oh yeah.
He's for geoengineering, yet he's against the conspiracy of chemtrails. Like, what the fuck?
We should have him on the show.
So we should actually. He wouldn't come on. No. Okay, ready? So I'm just going to play a little bit of this.
Let me talk to him.
And this is It's Your Sky, Tennessee. And it brings up this last little point here.
One of the main reasons they use aluminum
What's up with your cord?
is because it's highly reflective.
It's your jack.
to block
Mac
the
is
sun's
notorious for
rays.
shitty jacks.
But there's another reason. It's cheap.
Another reason.
David Keith
He's talking about the
explains
aluminum,
in his
right?
very own words right here.
Aerosol geoengineering looks like it is so cheap that the cost is basically not going to be an issue. That means that implementation decisions will be risk-to-risk decisions. The risk of doing it against the risk of not doing it. And it makes the problem of how we govern it fundamentally harder and different. So I've told you that it's cheap to deliver materials to the stratosphere. I'm convinced that's true. I don't think that will change. But I think the more we do research, the less easy this will look, the more complicated the environmental effects will look. And that's a good thing, because right now it looks too easy. So I think that if we do more research, we're likely to find out that it's harder and more complicated than we thought, and that the side effects are harder to manage. And that's a healthy outcome that will make it easier to do the magic. Of course, the opposite reaction is possible. It's an empirical question how people will actually react to knowledge about this. Another reaction is to say, if these crazy scientists are so concerned about putting CO2 in the atmosphere, they want to think about these things, and that might actually mean we should be more serious about the risk of CO2 in the atmosphere. And by the way, it's not really a moral hazard. It's more like free riding on our grandkids.
He says it's not a moral hazard. It's like free riding on our grandkids. He's saying that it's way easier than you think to fucking spray chemicals in the atmosphere. It's too easy right now. So the more they go on and do scientific research about it, the harder it's going to become to sell this. So he's basically, I think, if I read between the lines a bit, he's advocating for it sooner than later. Or if he would look into it, it's probably already being done. But you know, why mess around with it? Why take that chance? Why spray shit into the atmosphere and take that chance? 10,000 years ago, 11,000 years ago, we're under a mile or two of ice around here. So yeah, it's warmed up a lot. And it's cooled down since then, and it's warmed up again. So why try and control that?
Easy.
Well, it bugs me. Because you have all these people that are completely on the other side that, like, I'm not saying it's not warming. I'm just saying maybe we are affecting it in this other way as well, not just from our carbon emissions. And I'm paying a carbon tax here. Actually, I wanted to get into that. And so are you. How much are you paying every year in carbon tax now for this hoax?
I pay a lot of tax.
It's ridiculous.
Tax is my biggest expense by double.
Like it's just getting unmanageable.
I pay double a year in tax what I pay for rent.
What? Really?
Yeah. So do you probably. Wow. Your T4.
Yeah, that's crazy, eh?
Yeah.
That's brutal. But now we're paying for this extra carbon
if you
tax.
took my food and my shelter and added it together, it would equal my tax.
Yeah.
Almost.
And then where's it going? How much of that went to the fucking Clinton Foundation? Or how much of that goes to these other countries that you don't even know if it's getting to the right people? It's going through a fucking NGO or a foundation. And where's that going? Into somebody's pocket?
Well, it's going to get harder to push back because it looks like YouTube is going to up the censorship because it's lost more advertisers due to offensive videos. I'm sure there's a lot of offensive shit on YouTube, but you got to wonder what's going to start to count as offensive.
Exactly. That's the problem.
Someone's offended by everything.
So this conversation is going to be taken off because it's offensive.
It's just a matter of time until we get kicked off YouTube. That's why I've been actually encouraging people to download the back catalog. I still haven't done it, but I want to have a couple hard copies of it just in case someone ever decides that,
So let's get into that now.
Then. I don't even have a whole copy.
What are you talking about the downloading?
Well, I don't have a hard copy of our episode. So if anything ever happened to Libsyn, everything's gone.
And that's our host, our provider of the platform. Yeah. And they put it out everywhere for us.
Yeah. I'm actually going to download it all because I talked to Rob at Libsyn and he told me if you go into iTunes and like subscribe or unsubscribe and then resubscribe, it'll give you the option to download all. So you just have to click once and it'll download every episode instead of having to go through them all at once. So I think I'm actually going to do it on this computer today. And you should do it at home. It'd just be good to have in a couple places, the back catalog.
So are you suggesting people do it through iTunes then? Like go select all and download it all? And then what? Then copy that to
I'd like to have a couple,
hard drive somewhere?
And, you know, the thing is, it's a lot of data. Like, you'd almost have to buy a stick or something.
Yeah.
Because I think like 200 episodes at, you know, plus minus 100 megs a piece. That's what, 20 gigs?
Can we just buy a stick and bury it in a Faraday cage somewhere and then people can open it up like 300,000 years from now and listen to Grimerica?
There you go. We should actually even print a couple episodes on vinyl and put them in we'll put a USB stick and some vinyl and we'll get a little, we'll weld up a little steel,
cage,
a little steel fucking time capsule.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's bury it.
Yeah. With some favorite books and stuff.
Yeah. So anyway, support the show for more of our harebrained schemes. Where was I going now? You railroaded me.
About iTunes, about the downloading.
Oh yeah, so yeah, if you got the space, if you got 20 gigs, or if you do, email me and let me know. I just feel a little better if it was on a couple of different places. You know what I mean? If it's only on Libsyn in here, then it really wouldn't take much to be gone. Yeah. Not that I think that day's coming soon, but who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows nowadays?
Well, it just takes an EMP.
Yeah, and everything's gone. Well, yeah, and everything's gone.
Yeah. Carrington event. Boom.
Bong.
Actually, would it affect us here in the...
I think the igloo would probably be okay.
We're pretty well protected in this old walk-in freezer turned
I think if we
studio.
If we wrapped it, we should figure out what we have to wrap it in.
Yes, let's do that. Just tinfoil or whatever.
But then does that make the effect of all the electronics in here even worse?
Yeah. Just bouncing off the insides of the walls and yeah.
8x8 with fucking 50 things plugged in, Wi-Fi.
Well, maybe we can have a cover and then we take off the cover when we come in. And then when we leave, we put the cover back on and protects everything.
A Faraday cover?
Yeah.
That'd be worth looking into.
A convertible Faraday cover.
Keep a cell phone in here and a ham radio.
Pretty small to live in here, though. I was just thinking.
You don't need to live in the Faraday cage.
I'm talking about when a disaster strikes, you know?
You still don't need to live in here. You just need your electronics to be in here.
Yeah.
If the event is bad enough to burn you outside the igloo, it's going to burn you inside the igloo, too. It just might not catch you on fire. You're just going to melt.
Yeah.
You're going to be air cooked like a Tefal.
Tefal?
You know, those Tefals, they cook that shit with hot air, basically.
Do they?
Yeah. That's what would happen in here. It would be like an oven. This thing would turn into an oven.
The Tefal frying pan?
No, the fucking thing that it's like a deep fryer, but you just put in a little bit of oil.
I don't know.
It's a Tefal.
I don't know what it is.
Oh.
Tefal's a brand, right? Are you talking about the brand?
It's the brand, yeah.
Okay.
I think it's called the Actifry or something like that.
Oh, okay. Anyways, do you want to get into some listener stuff, or should we just save that for another show? How much time we got?
Well, we got as much time as we want. I suppose we're over 2 hours, but we're not at 3 yet.
Well, let's just have a couple listener emails then to share.
I have the jingle back then. The jingle cord back.
Oh yeah, right. Hang on a sec. Here you go.
Yeah, the jack is fucked in my Mac Air. I think you can get it. I think Mac will do, though. It's like, well, it's clearly infected with CIA malware, too. That's a shitty thing. It all is.
Yeah?
Right from the assembly line, it looks like. They're infecting them fucking at factory default.
Wow. That's how bad it is?
Yeah.
Have you seen that meme going around with Mark Zuckerberg and they show his fucking little laptop?
No, that was a long time ago.
His has got tape over the video?
And the mic.
Unbelievable. He's got a fake mic in there, like a dongle that's cut off. So that the computer thinks there's a mic there, but it actually can't capture everything.
Yeah.
Nice. And that's the fucking new president of the world in 2024 or whatever.
Zuck?
Huh?
Zuckerberg?
Yeah.
You think so?
No, there's memes that he's going to run.
He's a little young to be president of the world. Where's my jingles now? So what do you got for me?
Spam/synchro kind of stuff.
This still seems to be the all-time favorite.
I'm a rambling gram with synchronicities. all over the web. And Darren is skeptical about everyone and don't believe it yet.
I hope I haven't read this. I kind of feel like I have it. This is from Cowboy Matt. He says, "Hello, Darren and Graham. I've been listening for a while and enjoying the show immensely. You guys are a lot of fun to listen to when I'm driving for work. I have a quick little funny synchro to share with you guys. I've been sitting on it for a few weeks and originally envisioned composing a witty email full of good-natured ribbing, but I figure I'll just keep it brief and throw it out there for you. I stopped in at a gas station convenience store to buy a gallon of milk after work one day and noticed the cashier behind the register had a name tag that said Big Dan on it. It reminded me of the Coen Brothers film Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?, where John Goodman plays a character named Big Dan Teague. I mentioned this to the guy, and he said although he did enjoy that movie, the moniker had been adopted to differentiate himself from the other three guys who worked there, also named Dan. I told him I have a similar issue. 3 guys at my company are also named Matt. He chuckled for a second and said that Matt was his brother's name. Guess what my brother's name is?
Matt.
Dan. My brother Dan had worked at the same gas station about 10 years ago.
Oh,
Weird
this
stuff.
is from Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird stuff. Though not particularly meaningful, the coincidences involved were a bit staggering. The topic only came up due to a reference to a movie with the word brother in the title. We each take on modifiers to differentiate ourselves with others we work with who have the same names. And we each have the same names as the other's brothers. Anyway, do this with as you will. Keep up the good work. Graham, don't stop believing. All in chemtrails. And Darren, keep up the stony baloney skepticism. So much for leaving out good-natured ribbon.
Nice. Thanks, Matt. So there's a bunch of Darrens at work.
Yeah. Yeah.
There used to be 3 no's. 1 died. That's too bad. Man.
Yeah. Oh, I know. So, yeah, you going to rate that guy or?
Yeah, I'll give him a 6.
6.
No good?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. No, it's funny. Yeah, it's good. Yeah,
it's funny. Okay. It's a good one, but I can't,
Yeah, it's okay. You can't rate them all high.
There's not much profoundness there.
Yeah. So this is another spam. This is from...
I think I know Cowboy Man. I think he's active someplace.
Yeah, it's hard to remember all the names and nicknames that people have and stuff. He's probably in touch with us somehow. He's probably in the Google chat or something.
Might be a Facebooker.
This is from Sean. It says, this is the podcast, just the podcast I was looking for. I started watching your show a couple weeks ago. I was at a convenience store on the way to Mount Hood. Well, that's weird.
Our show was playing in a convenience store?
No, but it's another convenience store email. I didn't realize.
Just keep going.
On the way up to Mount Hood in Boring, Oregon. Yes, that's the city's real
Mount
name.
Hood. Hey, I've been to Mount Hood. Yeah, I've been to Mount Hood. I climbed that motherfucker.
Did you?
There's a waterfall there, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I climbed up to the top of the waterfall.
So it gets very boring here, and your show gets me through the day with my sanity intact. I found you guys after I had a good acid/yoga experience during the weekend, and the next day at work, I thought I should listen to something mentally stimulating instead of just staring out the window. I found your show, and it was exactly what I was looking for. I've listened to at least one episode every day since. You guys immediately remind me of a show on YouTube called Spirit Science. It covers some of the same ideas as you guys, but it's all done as a cartoon. They focus a lot on sacred geometry too, something I don't believe you guys have covered yet. I think if you get a hold of him, you could have a really good episode, or maybe a couple together. Looking forward to what you guys would come out with next. Great work. Keep it up.
Maybe you can make you a cartoon for the show too, or a video.
Yeah.
A little Graham cartoon with big old calves.
Planning to send some trip reports when I get anything that's explainable but still worthy of sharing. Hope you guys like my suggestion.
Actually, UK Posse offered a calf rub to get into the Google Hangout.
Oh, really? Sure.
I think Kevin missed that it was an open invite and asked how he got into the group. He's like, whose calves do I have to rub?
Kevin Stevens?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So this is entertaining some ideas, and this is entertaining in some of the ideas that I've heard mentioned on your show. So he sent a couple links over. And yeah, thanks for the email.
Absolutely.
That's an awesome way to find us. Like after an acid yoga
I feel
experience.
the same way after acid.
I know you have this productivity
the next
feeling.
day I feel like,
super productive.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that the other day, and I was like, yeah, that's how organized people feel normally, Darren.
You fucking fuck. Yeah. Shout out to Kevin, too, who's probably at work right now. I think we're usually lined up in his podcast player for Monday morning.
Oh, right on.
He's probably right now worried that it won't be there.
Yeah, I think I've heard of this Spirit Science as well.
I've watched a bunch of them. It's good.
Have you?
Yeah. I'd have him on.
But I thought there was another website that people were recommending, like Spirit Science or Science Spirit or something like that. And I was trying to get the guy on, and he was going to come on, and then something fell through.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll try that. And honestly, we love the recommendations, and we try and follow as many as we can. But it gets overwhelming sometimes. So people, if you haven't heard from me, just feel free to email me back and ask what's going on, or if you don't ever get the guest that you recommend, just feel free to remind us. It's hard to keep track.
You don't get anything. If you need a shirt, if we owe you anything, just fucking bug us.
Yeah.
If I owe you a blog, if we owe you a shirt, because it's just two of us. We got a couple people that help out, like Justin and guys like that, but it's all...
but all the normal logistics and all the organizing.
Nobody else is actually here, you know what I mean? Other than James from time to time. But all the other like internal stuff is all, we're trying to deal with it all.
Yeah.
And the amount of emails and stuff does start to get a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
So, and we don't want to be those people that you email and we just ignore it. So if you've got something or you want to get something through and you don't get a response, then just keep hitting it. Eventually you'll get a response.
Yeah, exactly.
Just ask Craig Flowers.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of, that's a good little, what do you call that again?
It's a segue when you don't mention it.
Segue, right. Yeah.
When you mention it, the segue is ruined.
So this is some comments from Instagram regarding our episode with Craig Flowers, and it's from Fires in the Sky.
Wait.
Darren's got a little jingle for this.
Bingo, bango, social media jingle.
Oh, that's really
instant classic.
Is that what it's growing on me? When I first heard that jingle, I was slightly skeptical, but now it's growing on me. So he's the one that commented originally on Craig Flowers' episode on Instagram. Then he says here he was commenting again. So he says, "Sorry to keep spamming you guys, but I finally got to finish the second half of this episode, and it was so good I immediately listened to it again from the beginning. I tied up so many loose ends for me. It was crazy. Sigils, geometry, Merkabas, tetragrammatrons, chanting, mantras, subconscious programs, karma, Super Bowl rituals, emotions, as the biological manifestation of etheric plus-minus charge and more. Magic really is just science we don't understand. The part about orgone energy was interesting. When Darren asked if nesting geometries concentrated the etheric energy, it made me think of the orgone collectors Reich built. And yes, you should definitely do the chat room thing. Is that what he's talking about? What you just did? Because I don't remember talking about a chat room recently.
Yeah. I talked about doing hangouts on the show. But I can't even be bothered to step up to the mic.
He was just sitting back in his chair.
Well, I didn't. You were supposed to be doing shit. I talked about it a couple times, and then you know what it was? It was actually Ali B from UK Posse.
Ali Buchan.
Or Bushan. Isn't it Bushan?
Buchan.
I think it's Bushan.
No, it's Buchan.
He emailed me and he was like, "Hey, how do I get into the group?" And I hadn't even made the group yet. So I was like, okay, I made the group that minute. And I added him into it.
Oh, okay.
So I think he was actually the first person ever in the group. And then you might be in the group.
Me?
No.
Oh, this guy.
I kind of went.
Fires in the Sky?
No, I don't know about him. But
who are you talking to?
Regular YouTube people. Because I threw names of people that are like off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I can search them. And then if the profile picture came up with something that correlated to the one I see when they interact with me on Twitter or something or YouTube, then I just added them. Okay. I wanted to get some people in there off the bat.
So I don't think we ever talked about how to get in there for people. Like, how do you get into this Google chat thing?
I don't know.
What?
The only other ones
we just talked about it earlier today. About
I'm going to make the link, grimerica.ca/.
Oh, right.
And there's a link pinned to the Twitter page, and I'll email you the actual link to put in the show notes. But I'm going to make a pretty link. That's grimerica.ca/hangout.
You're going to do that today, right?
Today, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And it's basically just, like I said, a little chat room.
Okay. Were you going to say something else about?
No, I was going to go back to leaning back.
Okay, continuing on. All my synchros have been pointing toward the fact that it's time for like minds working individually to come together. And since my synchros all seem to specifically involve subject matter from your shows, I'm following a hunch that you're involved. After hearing the outro, I'm 99.99999% sure of it. I see it all as a healing process. Better explained in an email/novel I've been trying to condense. Like we've hit a critical mass and are now ready to reach out and reconnect with each other. Like neurons in one big brain. You guys are the best at what you do because you really level the playing field. Big thanks to you both and Dan. Oh, sorry, that wasn't about Craig's episode. That was about Dan's episode, which came out after Craig's.
That's right. Craig's is a doozy too. If you haven't listened, listen.
Yeah, that was Dan Davidson. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
I think that's it.
Oh,
you got anything else?
Hang on, yeah. And he says. Afterwards, he says, and the first random hit on the podcast list today, Earth, Alchemy, Ether Physics, Shaman
Engineer.
Yeah, Shaman Engineer on Carl Wood's podcast.
Use your Shamangination.
Yeah. So, yeah, interesting.
So buddies listen to a show a day. That's crazy.
Yeah, totally.
Must get sick of us after I would think. I get sick of Graham after a couple hours. But it refreshes every day.
What does? Your sickness?
My tolerance of you.
Yeah.
Fuck, I lost where I was going with that.
Yeah, I think that's...
Oh, yeah, day is. Fuck, that's almost a year it'll take him to catch up now.
You're what?
It would take a good fucking 8 months to catch up on the back catalog now. At an ep a day.
Oh, yeah, right. Wow, really?
216 after today.
Wow.
This will be 216. I'm not even sure the count is right.
Yeah.
Because I think I left a bunch out. When I was counting, I didn't count certain episodes.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's going to be 2/3 of a year anyway. All right, guys. I think that's about it. Enjoy the chat with Connor and Gordon, longtime favorites. It's a doozy. And yeah.
I'll put links to our original episodes with both those guys in the show notes as well.
Oh, that's swell. All right, guys. Enjoy.
So tonight we've got a bit of a roundtable happening with a couple of our favorite past guests in Grimerica, Connor Habib and Gordon White. I'm pretty sure we're going to be talking about the occult and magic and a little bit of some other stuff, I'm sure. Welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Welcome back. Second appearance for Gordon and third for Connor.
Yeah, and in case you don't know,
I wasn't told
which, I'm the one, Gordon's the one with the accent.
Yeah, I'm the one that sounds foreign.
AKA very intelligent. Oh, sounds that way.
So you're in Australia now, Gordon?
I am, and also in case you don't know, and you just think we're quite weird, Connor and I have spoken once or twice before, so this isn't usually how we relate to strangers. This is how we talk. But yes, same in Australia. I've been back about 9 months. Yeah.
If we were strangers, we would be treating each other with total disdain.
I thought this was the first time you guys had chatted, actually.
Well, why have you not been listening to Rune Soup to know that is not true?
Oh, that's a good point. So I had only made it through like 2 of the latest episodes, so you must be back a little ways.
Try to bury him in the back catalog, maybe people won't find it.
You have to ask. You have to especially ask for Connor's episode. It's a private line.
Is it video as well?
Not this time.
So, well, Gordon, you do have Rune Soup out. I think you had just started it not too long ago, or was it even longer than that? But when we had you on last, so now is it in podcast format and on YouTube as well?
Yeah, it is. It's actually been going for a while. I think I came on to talk about Starships, which was my first book when that one came out. Whatever it was, beginning of last year. Yeah. But the blog has been going since about 2009, probably exactly 2009, and now it's a podcast and also a premium membership service and that kind of thing. And it just it swells to take up my whole life.
Funny how that happens.
And Connor, what about you? You've got a lot of stuff going on lately too, right?
I always have stuff going on. It's kind of like the weird thing about being like a public speaker type person who doesn't have books. Like, you always get invited on shows when you have a book come out, and I've been like taking my time with my book for a really long time. And so but I've been teaching more and more like online courses about the occult. So I've shifted a lot of my sort of energy to it's not that I've shifted away from sex, but and talking about sex and pornography, but I've been talking a lot more about the occult publicly lately, and been getting asked to do talks on that more. And so that's where a lot of it is gone. And, it's how Gordon and I interacted, the first time was through a series of sort of synchronicities. And then we, and so that's where my main interests lie right now.
Nice. Do you guys remember those synchronicities? Can you tell us how that happened?
Gordon might not know them, actually. I told him, but it's been a while. So I was driving to San Francisco from LA, and I was driving, and I talked to this guy who's a sort of ceremonial magician kind of guy, and he was like, "Hey, I'm reading this book called Chaos Protocols, and it's so awesome, and it's like helping me understand the economy and blah blah blah." And he's like, "It's by this guy Gordon White," and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. All right, man. Like put that on like the list of 8 bajillion books I need to read." And so then I'm like, I get off the phone with him, I turn on Skeptico, and Gordon's the guest.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, that's funny. So I was like, all right, when I get to San Francisco, I'm going to check it out. So I check it out, and then Gordon was following me on Twitter, and I was like, what the hell? So then I just reached out to him. We started talking, and the rest is really beautiful history.
That's a nice story.
For pornographic reasons, I don't really respect his opinion.
My pornography is my opinion. Thank you.
There you go.
Well, I think it's a really interesting time to talk about this topic too, because it seems to be out in the open now, the occult and a lot of this stuff, whether you talk about Pepe or Keck, or there's people that are recognizing this at the highest levels in our government, that this is going on, and it feels like there's some sort of metaphysical battle going on. So I think it's really interesting times right now.
It's certainly caught the current, and if you consider what the word occult originally means, as in the sense that it's hidden, one of the things I think, especially this week, that defines the kind of modern political and cultural landscape is the surfacing of what was previously hidden. And so there's an almost kind of macro occult emergence theme that is that contains within it the kind of return or rediscovery of, you know, full-blown magic and psi effects and so on within a wider culture, particularly as our trust in mouthpieces erodes, so that you have, you know, I don't know if it works anymore to get Bill Nye to show up on television and tell you it's all nonsense. Like, it just, no one's watching the shows, and even if they are, no one's believing that.
This hashtag fake Nye. Yeah, I mean, I think I think, you know, as Gordon points out, that original meaning of occult is hidden in you know, and people are seeking right now, because everything that's sort of breaking down or collapsing or being seen as not viable anymore, people are seeking. And when you look, you find shit, and also you find who hid it, and also you realize that it was hidden to be found. That's why you hide something, you know. Either you want the tension of knowing that something's there to be discovered, and it is being discovered. And I think that, you know, what you guys are pointing out is the sort of tension you feel when new spiritualities are being created in the world, because that's what I think really is going on. It's we can call it spiritual renaissance, and a lot of things that look like spiritual, or that don't look like spiritualities that are being created. But I think that that's happening right now, and that's where a lot of, which also means that new gods are not only being, you know, sort of recreated, but different ones are being evoked and sort of mishmash slapped together with other ones and all this sort of stuff. So it is really a bizarre moment for that kind of stuff, but also great.
Yeah, it beats not having it. This kind of thing, you know, if you look back through history at kind of end of empire moments, there were never more wizards and soothsayers in Rome than in the years leading up to its collapse. And there is something about, as Connor said, like you get an emergence of new spiritualities. But even like, if you consider that a subset of worldviews, we have the complete failure of left and right to model or navigate challenges of the 21st century, to the point that they're just a complete mess. And this is kind of what happens. This is almost the return of magic is almost, in permaculture we call weeds a recovery species, because they heal damaged soil. And it's almost like the return of magic is a recovery species to allow people to reorient around things that we would consider more important on an individual and on a collective basis.
Wow. So we're not, like, I'm not too familiar with the occult. I'm interested in it. I'm interested in spirituality and all that kind of stuff, but I'm more, you know, and as far as the other types of views, we try and stay in the center, which is more and more difficult, it seems. But so for somebody that's not too familiar with it, why are these things meant to be found? If they're hidden and meant to be found, what's the reason behind that?
Well, the thing that they're hidden by is, well, there are a lot of things they're hidden by, but one of the things they're hidden by is just simply our decision to experience sensory input in a certain way. Why do we go through our day experiencing things the way that we do? Why, for instance, here's a really simple one. Why, when I shake somebody's hand, am I not thinking about their kidneys and bladder and liver and all that? I've decided, for whatever reason, to shuffle that aspect of their being away and to focus on something else when I'm meeting them. So even though there's this whole totality of a being in front of you, just as there is with everything, when you're just sitting in your chair, when you're reading a book, when you're seeing a movie, whatever, we select certain aspects of our experience to focus on. And so that is directly linked to certain people in power, certain currents in power, certain spirits, certain dead beings, all that sort of stuff that determine what kind of focus we have, as well as our own determination just as people. And so, you know, there's sort of a vying for what kind of gets the attention right now. So I think that's just one way to talk about how things are hidden. I think there's a lot of other ways, but I'll stop because I'm sure Gordon has something to say about it as well.
Yeah, I mean, there you can kind of look at some specific things that are deliberately and politically hidden, and that's been going on for millennia. We tend to think of the Christians, specifically the Catholic Church, as being very anti-magic because you obviously have the witch trials and so on. But they inherited that way of approaching magic from the Romans. So you had it was punishable by death to kind of sneak out of the city to practice magic in I think it was Vespasian, sort of in the 200, 300 AD area. It was actually the church that inherited these ideas that certain forms of soothsaying and astrology and the practice of magic are banned because they have political implications, because they work. And in that sense, there's always a tension between a kind of governing system and magic, because the guys who are in charge would like a monopoly on this thing that works. And that's a relationship that's played out in the Cold War with things like MK Ultra and so on. This idea that you kind of you either ban people from it, or as we did in the 20th century, tell them it doesn't exist, whilst vigorously using it behind the curtain.
It's the same reasons why sex is so regulated. Both magic and sex are really intensely individualized things. And once you begin to access them and practice them in a real way, you begin to realize your individuality. You begin to realize your self in some sense as a universe. And who the fucking power wants that to happen? Nobody. Once you realize that you are sort of a teeming, swirling universe, because once you point to your own individuation, once you point to your own sort of nexus of being and all the factors that make that up, it becomes very difficult to have people sort of sway you, persuade you to the insistence of their worldview. Everybody has moments like these in their lives, very simple moments, which we tend to think of as stoner moments and kind of laugh at. Like, man, money doesn't have any value; it's just a piece of paper. That's actually a really profound moment. That's a betrayal of a kind of spirituality that has been forced upon us in a lot of ways. When I remember a version of it when I was a kid, sitting in class, I was in like 3rd, 4th grade, something like that. And I was like, why do I have to raise my hand and ask a question? As soon as you have bigger scale versions of that kind of stuff, because you're realizing the sort of primacy and intensity of your own individuality rather than the narrative that's forced on you, the people that are in power are kind of fucked if too many people do that. They just can't keep it together,
What shocks me right now is how many people are holding on to their worldviews. Like, even though, you mentioned that they're not really watching, TV at the same rate and all that kind of stuff, but it does seem to be that there's still this massive polarization and brainwashing, even for people that would call themselves anti-establishment or, anti this and that, because the person that they don't want, to be in charge is there. It just seems like everybody's clinging on desperately.
That's psychologically very predictable. That's certainly the case. This is not the 70s where and in a new age sense, where we're all going to kind of collectively elevate our consciousness. It's more, this is why I use the weeds metaphor. Things are kind of crap. And it's in that sort of environment that magic thrives, and magic is found by those who look for it. But yes, it's difficult. And a lot of people, and this is not just in politics, because you're completely right, a lot of people will, rather than change, cling to something that is self-evidently incorrect because it seems easier. And we're in a kind of fairly alarming polarization. And I know exactly what you mean. Connor and I have had these discussions where what I think people think of as radical in 2017 in the US, it's funny that we only became aware of fascism when a certain candidate didn't win, when you can kind of conclusively say either the creation of the CIA or the, assassination of JFK and definitively the Patriot Act is when it was sort of enshrined. But there's and I kind of have a glass half full look at it, which is they will work out that that's not correct. So it's sort of like it's the wrong answer to the right question. And hopefully as this kind of chaos does what chaos does, more people will reorient in a way that I think is like individually and collectively beneficial.
How long is that shit going to take? Because this is getting old.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I mean, that's, the really scary thing is it's not a question of content, it's a question of gesture. And what I mean by that, there's like this sort of moment where the French psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan, was approached by students in 1968 and who were revolting at the time. And they were like, what do you think of this? What do you think about what's going on? And he said, well, look, I'm not going to give you advice. What you don't really want a revolution. What you want is new masters, basically. And that's the tendency, because it's a problem of actually finding a new way to move and be. Because what happens, and you can see this throughout history, is that when we dethrone one master, we pick another. What the occult, I hope, can help us with, and certain other kinds of systems that we can pull on and ways of thinking and being, is that we don't even want masters anymore. We're not moving from one thing to the next. So there's not a vacuum when we sort of dethrone what's going on. Actually, there's a blooming that something grows in this space that is not a void, but it's actually soil. And that's difficult for people to grasp. And that's why when you ask about so many people holding on to their worldviews, even if they're not holding on to their worldviews, they're, it's like, oh, well, Hillary lost, but don't worry, whatever, the DNC, let's just move to the next basic thing. Or, they'll do something that appears to be radical. They'll say, oh, well, we need socialism, we need Marxism. And I just always think to myself, like, what are you looking for in that moment? You're really just sort of looking for something that is, marginally different. And I realize that socialists will hate me saying it's marginally different, but in a lot of ways, marginally different compared to what we could create. I'll say that, at least compared to what we could be doing,
What do you think causes that? Is that from like a generation of people that have kind of lost that, that I don't know what the word is, maybe gumption or whatever that people used to have to kind of do things for themselves, and nowadays they just kind of want to sit on their couch and play video games and have fucking life delivered to them?
For me, that would be part of it, but I want to, and I give this to both, people who voted Trump and people who are extremely upset that Trump won. People are really angry, and really, really angry, and justifiably so. And the trouble with that psychologically is anger is extremely useful in the short term, but it's not the best place to build from given the circumstances. So I think a lot of it's you don't think through very well, which is kind of said like, well, what are you going to do? Replace if you impeach Trump, you end up with President Pence, and he's like actually worse. Like, have you thought about how this would work? And of course they haven't, because the emotional place for it is not kind of aligned with what needs to happen. It's again one of those short-term things. The anger, it can be useful, but you don't think as well when you're angry. And I'd give them that, as well as the sort of other side of it, which is there are better ways we could be living and experiencing the world in a way that isn't mediated by either digital platforms or excuses or so on. And this kind of journey, sex would do it. Allegedly, I'm in a long-term monogamous relationship. What do I know? But magic certainly would as well. And that is actually that's the challenge. That's the quest. That's the thing that I hope we're either forced to do because it gets even worse, or we, on an individual basis, work out this is what we should be doing.
What would be an example? Like, how would someone listen to this podcast right now? How could they get started down that path?
I want to jump in first there because they have. There's a chapter in the Chaos Protocols called "Becoming Invincible," and what that essentially means is that you have to have some experience that will permanently and completely break a materialist technocratic paradigm. You need to have something happen to you that shows that this is not correct, and you will never, because we do tend to backslide in Western cultures. We will backslide into a sort of Cartesian naturalist interpretation if we're not paying attention. But you need to be abducted by aliens. You need to have some sort of, profound entheogenic shamanic experience in the Amazon. I use other examples because I don't even think these need to be nice. And I think from a magical perspective, historically they rarely were. If you look at the different magical modes around the world and back through time, something Dr. Kreipel says, an encounter with God can kill you. That's the reality of these sort of experiences. So I speciously use an example of you can bust into an abandoned mental hospital in the middle of the night with an Ouija board, and you will come out of that experience probably crazy and terrifying, but you will come out of it knowing, and consider how much more valuable this is. You will come out of it knowing that the next time you see Bill Nye and his stupid bow tie on television, he's talking shit. There's no way of getting the toothpaste back into the tube. And that, funnily enough, is quite a good first step. You may already have had it. People who listen to the show may have grown up in a haunted house or whatever it happens to be. But you need something that isn't like a mild, oh, that's funny synchronicity. The reality of magic needs to punch you in the neck.
Yeah.
You're talking.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just thinking you were talking about how the paranormal or a spiritual experience would mold your worldview a little bit and sort of wake you up.
Mushrooms count?
Yeah, mushrooms count. That's an entheogenic experience. But I mean, and that's partly of why this whole awakening is happening. I'm assuming that there's been so many people that have had these experiences and they have platforms like this where they can talk about them. That must have something to do with this as well.
100%.
Yeah, I think it's really good. It was something that, maybe like 15 years ago or something, Daniel Pinchbeck was talking about a lot, and he really took it from Terence McKenna, but I think he said it quite well when he was just like, look, these are going to be medicine. Like these things are going to be medicine for people that are really confused. Like this just needs to happen right now, more than 15 years ago, actually, because he was talking about it in reference to 2012, which by the way, did probably happen. Exactly. Really funny thing to think about. But I don't shame people for doing drugs, but a lot of spiritual people give me shit for being like, I'm not anti-drug, like I'm not the Nancy Reagan of the occult. But I do think that we need, for various reasons, but I do think that we need to somehow add a level or a layer of intention to the way we encounter things after we do drugs, right? Because lots of people trip, especially ayahuasca now is really permeated culture in a big way. And they're still having these experiences, but it gets reduced again to something sort of flaccid, for lack of a better term. Like it becomes something that's not really doing much for them, can't really work in them in any deep way. And what you often see is people who do hallucinogenics do again and again and again and again and again, which I think is fine. I don't have any sort of moral prescription against that. But as a sort of way to evade spiritual work, because there's effort in the trip, but you don't have to put any effort into getting there. You don't have to put effort in what Gordon is talking about. One of the most significant aspects of what he's talking about is like, you got to be kind of fucked up, right? I was lucky enough to be like really fucked up at an early age for a lot of reasons, right? And to have scary shit happen to me, just sort of scary everyday horrible stuff, and then also some supernatural stuff. But you also have to it really has to start feeling like a risk at a certain point. And people are just doing hallucinogenics again and again. They're not necessarily experiencing that risk. a lot of them aren't experiencing the risk at all. And so when you talk about a Ouija board in a haunted house, you got to crawl out of that. You really got to crawl out of that in a way. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have really had that kind of thing follow them around. Gordon and I talked, and I had an event when I was 8 or something where I tried to summon the devil, and that honestly that followed me around. That fucked up event followed me around until I talked to Gordon. It's still following me, but it's like something healthy happened after that conversation. And so Gordon, and also reading another book from Scarlet Imprint called Apocalyptic Witchcraft by Peter Gray, it's these things happen and they will fucking haunt you. They're scary, but they're not worse than the world we live in, and that's the point.
Absolutely. And I think if I can interrupt you there, Nancy, you're absolutely right. It's kind of like recreational subsequent use of entheogens. But if you do, going back to McKenna, 5 grams of dried mushrooms taken in silent darkness, you come out of that. The key for me is can you look at Bill Nye and just go in your head, and never let him convince you. If you were trapped, in the movie Saw with Bill Nye, never let you won't ever backslide into it. And one of those events that was the devil for you as an 8-year-old. It can be, and it really doesn't. In the long run, it doesn't matter as long as you do something with it. And the first thing with it is to live in that bigger universe that happens once you. That's why I call it becoming invincible, because all of a sudden, everything else, and something Connor and I have spoken about, Trump, Clinton, whatever, they're playing a much, much smaller game than you once you are at that level of invincibility.
Yeah, and I think the next step after that is doing what I call becoming psychotic, right? So you have to start creating, and this is very funny because this is happening in the world in a widespread way. You have to start creating your own facts. Now, there's a really negative way that's happening in the world, which is that everything is just sort of abandoned. What you don't like is not a fact. But that's not really procreative. People are just inheriting the facts that they want. Mm-hmm. What you actually have to do is begin to create the facts of the universe itself. So, for instance, I was reading this book. This is just a few months ago, reading this book about this magician, this healer that lived in Cyprus. And I was really fascinated with him. I was really taken by him. And it's the second time I've read about him, but I was just getting sort of deeper and deeper into relating to this guy. And I was like, I need to learn more about Cyprus. I want to learn more about what that place is like, what the sort of geography, the psychogeography, the magical geography, all that kind of stuff is. And so I'm sitting in my apartment, and I've lived here for 3.5 years, a little more than that. And I look over, and on my bookshelf is a book that the title is Cyprus. I never bought this book. I did not purchase it. I'd never seen it before or whatever. And so I looked at it and I was like, what the fuck is happening? So obviously I do this, I do this sort of rational thing. I'm like, well, my roommate moved out in December. It's probably his book, right? I could call him up and he'd be like, that's my book, right? What I choose to do instead is say, no, this book was put here for me. And should I talk to my roommate about it, say to myself, well, sure, you think you put this here, but actually the universe arranged your memory to have thought that you put this here. So in fact, everything was sort of arranged so I could have this book on my shelf. Now that might sound crazy to you. However, I'm not an idiot. I'm not genuinely psychotic. Maybe I am, but I'm not genuinely psychotic in the way that it's and I'm not romanticizing psychosis in the sense that I can't control it or whatever. But I can't unthink now this fact that I created myself. Sure, I still have my doubts, and I can't unthink those either. But I've created an option for myself now, and I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop creating the world as I want to see it. And these ultimately creative acts, I think, are what start to stem out of this thing of becoming invincible. Because not only are you invincible to, hey, we're going to take your land, we're going to take your life, we're going to take your livelihood. And you're like, you know what? I'm a spiritual being. I have this intensity and invincibility in this universe because I am a star, or whatever you want to say. But you also start then to say, I am invincible against your narrative. I am invincible against your common sense, which is not common to me. I'm invincible against everything that you can hurl about me because I am now creating everything. And that's when, for me, things start getting really, really fucking intense. And that itself is a magical act.
Wow.
Is that, yeah. You have to rein that in at all, or, I don't mean in a negative way, but I mean, can that become dangerous? Like, is that kind of what, I guess, no, it's not, but people can definitely take it out of context.
All dangerous.
Yeah.
It's like, I've trained myself for years to be able to do that without losing my shit, So it's like, yes, of course it's dangerous.
And you're in California.
Exactly. But I mean, I was doing it before too. Of course it's dangerous. Becoming invincible, like with the Ouija board in the haunted house, is dangerous. Doing Evoca is dangerous. Like, these things are dangerous. That's the point.
What's the least dangerous of these that I can do?
I've been asked that before. I honestly think it's like doing the Amazon thing right, rather than finding something that's conveniently located for you. I think whenever you put yourself and respectfully put yourself in a structure that is designed to do this, and that seems to be the one that has captured the popular culture, but consciousness, but also I think ayahuasca about 10 or so years ago decided to get up from the jungle and said, right, you fuckers need some sorting out. And she's been on a real tear since then. So I honestly think within a living system that you have legitimate access to with someone who is actually a professional, we should do this. Like, if you consider what would have happened had we not pushed all these entheogens back behind the curtain because we were investigating whether or not they could be weaponized during the Cold War. Can you imagine what would have happened to different schools of psychotherapy if of open research into how we incorporate that into Jungian Western modes and so on? We wouldn't need to go to the Amazon because we would have the functional expression of that mode of healing available to us in our culture. And I suspect one way or the other, with the liberalization of laws and so on, we will get that, and it'll just be about a century late.
Hey, what about just a regular yoga and meditation practice? I mean, that'll get you there.
No, that ain't getting you there.
Yeah, it gets me there. See, I appreciate but I appreciate what you guys said about entheogens and the abuse that can happen too, right? Like, I come from, abusing alcohol and drugs till I got to my bottom, and then I had to get out of that. And that's the negative thing that happened to me. So for, 9 years, I've been trying it the old natural way, just to be more spiritual, I guess, or healthy. But even, guys like even Graham Hancock, he cures his pot addiction through ayahuasca, but then he's done that like 60 or 70 times. So when does that become an addiction that you're just constantly seeking, right?
Well, I mean, I think the addiction, I don't know how you dealt with your addiction. I don't know if you want the 12-step or not, but I mean, certainly people who have in mind to work 12-step with spiritual principles in mind, either from the get-go or when they get into it, I mean, that is a spiritual step ladder if you want it to be. And I'm not saying it is for everybody, and I don't, it's not effective for everybody, even that has, it goes for addiction stuff, but that's there in a way. What you guys are talking about, when you say what's the sort of light way, there are ways, right? Like, they just take a long time, and you want them to take a long time. You're going to have to do it either way, right? So there's a whole step system from anthroposophy, the system created by Rudolf Steiner. There's a really great little book called Stairway to Surprise by Michael Lipson, and it'll lead you through the steps to sort of refining your personality and creating spiritual sense organs in a way. It takes a long time, you're going to have to do that work anyway. So even if you have the really profound traumatic, you're going to have to do this work anyway, because you need to refine your personhood, and how the light gets in and out of you. You have to be a good lens and prism. But using that as the system to get to what Gordon is talking about, like, you might not want to do that right now at this moment in time. You might want to just throw a wrench in the gears and scare the shit out of yourself. And I also think, if you really don't want to engage, like if you're just like, man, I think there's in some senses, even a moral obligation to engage at this point. But if you don't want to, like, check out like positive thinking stuff. And Gordon and I have talked about this a little bit before. If you engage with that kind of stuff the right way, even if it's like Abraham Esther Hicks kind of stuff or whatever, or Seth Speaks, that kind of stuff, there is a deep spiritual principle and value in there. But you have to really, really work it. You can't be like, oh, great, like, I found a parking spot and now I'm getting my kale juice. Thank you, universe. Like, you should do that too. That's great too. Be grateful for your parking spot and kale juice. But you can't. You got to.
That's not becoming invincible unless I manage to slip some psilocybin into the kale juice.
Right. Exactly.
And good luck finding your car once that's done. I mean, you're right. Of course, if there are plenty of reasons why people may have some, personal reasons as to why they shouldn't go and get stoned in the jungle. That's completely fine. It does kind of put you in that. Okay, then you haven't been abducted by aliens. As far as I'm concerned, to satisfy becoming invincible, if you haven't been abducted by aliens, then you're kind of left with magic or the Ouija board in front of you. Because those are the things that like. It can't just be the benign, funny coincidence stuff. It needs to be an encounter with the numinous that, not historically, biblically will turn people to salt. It needs to be. It needs to be of sufficient intensity so that afterwards, the kind of process, and Connor was talking about this, but the yoga and meditation bit comes into it. That is a reintegration and further activation. Like, once you become invincible, you got to do something. You don't just wander out into traffic and yell, "Invincible!" And that's actually the journey. So, and that essentially maps to, if you want to say, vision quests or even shamanic initiations and so on, or the narrative structure, frankly, that you have to have that traumatic and profound shadow encounter, and then the rest of however long you are left on Earth is about integrating and activating that.
If you want to do something that, like, right now, as you're listening to this podcast, this, like, people are scared to even do this, but just fucking after the podcast is done, or just press pause, go outside, look up at the sky, and yell. And it doesn't matter if there are people around. I'm ready. Show up. Right? If you do that, I promise you something will happen. Now, it might not be obvious at first.
It will actually be at the door, like if you hear the doorbell.
When you decide to start, that's not going to be, again, that's not the action that Gordon and I are talking about, and that's not the refinement that I'm talking about either. But that is a way to start, like, right now. So,
what exactly is it? Is it just shedding that caring what other people think? That's one that I think, like, the world would be a way better place if people could just get rid of that one right away. The more
I think in this incident, and we can talk about philosophical or metaphysical models as to how this might work, but in some sense, and I tend towards a sort of Whitehead approach to this. You are co-creative in your experience of the universe. It will respond if you do that, and it doesn't even need to be yelling at clouds. He did say he wasn't psychotic, but whatever. The universe will always accept that invitation, always. So, and as to why that is the case, again, this comes back to the belief system that says that doesn't happen, which is this kind of materialist technocratic thing we have, is provably false. It has been falsified. So you're kind of left with well, something must happen, because the worldview, the one worldview on the planet that says nothing will happen is falsified. So that's kind of what you're doing there. The universe will take that invitation, and then you'll get the kind of string of weird stuff happening as you're driving off to get your drugged kale juice and all of
weaving them all together.
And all of a sudden you'll end up like reading books that you hadn't found before and meeting people. And you kind of, Crowley said, I strayed onto the path direct. And that's kind of what you're daring the universe to arrange for you when you yell at clouds.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, I did want to expand, Connor, on the 12-step thing, because that was a solution for me personally. The spiritual part of that was a solution. I mean, it was easier for me in some ways because I had this spiritual part of me when I was younger. I was doing meditation courses and stuff in like the early 90s, and then I'd lost all that. So I could see how for some people it would be difficult, but for me it was definitely a big part of that. And I still practice that type of work, and it's very helpful still. So I just wanted to say that. And it is interesting though, the stages of waking up, like through, especially now, even with all these current events happening, I mean, what used to be, people would talk about stuff and conspiracies and, we're just told lies and this and that. And I mean, as we go through these stages, you realize that more and more of that is true. And for me anyways, my worldview keeps changing, I think. I mean, it's still difficult, but.
Well, one of the things that 12-step programs do that is very rare in this culture is you have people with a certain disease speaking to each other about their disease in a serious way. So they come together and they engage sometimes 7 days a week and find communion with other people who are sick in the same way. We're all sick in this culture, and that is not to compare the kind of cultural illnesses we have all to each other or equate them with alcoholism or addiction or anything like that. This is not all an addiction model, but that doesn't work for all of it. However, if we all came together 7 nights a week, met with someone who had the same illness as us and sat in a room and talked, a profound healing effect starts to happen, and a profound revelation of the way the world works begins to appear. These are circles of disease and healing. So that's why that kind of stuff, on top of everything else that's in there, that's one of the reasons why.
I totally agree.
That's promising, because I mean, we were talking before about how we're about to see, or we're in the process of watching all this shit come crumbling down now. Like, the media and all that, like the days are numbered. And in its place, you're going to see it replaced by all these smaller little communities of, different podcasts or different YouTube channels and things like that. And I wonder if that isn't like baby steps towards those, smaller face-to-face communities. Instead, everyone's sitting on the couch and watching, Big Bang Theory or whatever the kids are watching these days.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's it. I think that's just the digital version of what Connor was talking about.
I think people.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I wonder if I kind of let me put it this way: the promise of digital utopianism in the 90s, when we all had bleached blonde hair and thought we were using our modems to access IRC and we're going to change the world, and a kind of splendid identity morphing thing. It's turned out to not at all be the case. It's a military surveillance technology. And I think the breakdown that we're seeing is also happening digitally. And because this was, what I did in London before I moved, the sort of digital strategy. The thing that is, we're actually experiencing a return of the real. If you look at what the kids these days, quote unquote, are actually using, which is something like Snapchat, like they think of Facebook as LinkedIn, like it's something because their parents are on it. Snapchat represents a return of the real, because if you weren't there for the moment, you don't get it. And that's what people who are born and raised in a digital environment are now looking for. And I kind of hope in the general collapse of all these monoliths, which I would include Facebook as probably the worst and prime example of that monolithic culture. As people migrate out of that, the thing they're migrating to is the real, and this manifests in kind of early sort of season shoot ways as an interest, and we tease people for it, and it's fine. You just got to look further up the timeline. But people who are interested in things like craft beer and the makers movement and all this kind of stuff, you're actually seeing people realize that this technocratic promise is disgusting. It's awful. We don't want it. And what I like about podcasts is that although it is a digitally delivered product, you are actually getting human voices. And having grown up in regional Australia prior to the internet, this is the kind of thing that I would have been like oxygen growing up. But it would have been like oxygen because it would have been embodied in my life. Like I could walk around my town listening to these voices. And that's where I kind of see, my hope for digital in the medium term is that we all realize that the future is not actually going to be digital, but we can use the digital to get to the future.
Right. Yes, that's the best way to put it. The technological stuff, this technique has showed up to give us something. Some of us will realize it, some of us won't. But this sort of fluorescing of these technologies where, just look at our daily lives, our work lives for everybody. Even blue collar workers sit at computers now. So you have people who are stationary in one position and their fingers and eyes are moving. Whereas, and that's what work looks like. You sit, you move your fingers, you move your eyes. And internally, there's all kinds of stuff going on. So that's a big part of everybody's day now, which is crazy.
I don't even move my eyes that much.
Not even move your eyes. Okay. So then in your everyday life, outside of work and also at work, you carry around this little rectangle with you that you operate with your hands. So this sort of triangulation of space is completely different now. We walk around looking at our phones as we walk. There's such an intensity of a sort of link to this little viewfinder that we have that people can't experience something without taking a selfie of themselves. However, that's interesting. This reflective process where they hold their phone up and take a picture of themselves in front of the Grand Canyon, they make themselves equal to the Grand Canyon in some way. Nothing sublime anymore. We begin to understand how we're related to things. You can look up something happening in China while you're on the street in Detroit. All this, so you're carrying the entirety of space around with you. So all these changes in our spatial dimension and our temporality have happened because of this. Right. So this is why one of the reasons why singularity stuff is so stupid. It's stupid because look, this shit has happened. It's already here. And this is an extension, by the way, of when Neil Armstrong went to the moon and he lands on the moon and he sees the Earth and he holds his hand up and he puts his thumb over the Earth and someone's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, everything I know is behind my thumb. Right. Well, what could be a better description of our world right now than everything we know being right at our thumbs, how we operate our phones, right? We've condensed spatial awareness into something that we manipulate with our hands and something we triangulate. So those are some of the things that we are learning and that are given to us in the future that Gordon's saying by this kind of technology. It has all its problems. And we've made it Rudolf Steiner called it the iron necessity. We've had this iron necessity, this trade-off with these demons to have this lesson. And now we will move forward. But we have to absorb the actual lessons, which are lessons of consciousness, interactions with space and time, instead of thinking that it's about having a robot puppy or yogurt that comes out of a wall when you press a button or some bullshit like that.
I didn't even know that was.
I don't think that's yogurt.
The arc he said of that hole.
Sounds like a glory hole, right? So, the glass half full part of that is that it seems like I was just thinking the digital, platform, especially Facebook, Twitter, and all this other stuff is really under. How do I explain it? It's like it kind of. it's almost manifesting this awakening. Like people are realizing that the control mechanism is there because now it's becoming obvious, right? Like before, saying, that people control the narrative in Facebook or whatever. Like now it's becoming blatantly obvious that there is a control mechanism giving you a narrative through these platforms that billions of people are on. And it's almost exposing that mechanism that may not have been exposed so easily before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last person who thinks, who will be left on Twitter who thinks everything is fine is Joy Reid, because like the rest of us are like, this is manipulated garbage, and you can kind of see in the people you follow or engage with an increasingly acute denialism for a lot of them, and then other people just going, I'm going to use this. Not necessarily under protest, but I'm going to use this being aware of what it is.
Exactly.
For my own purposes, which do not end on this platform. And I think that is kind of what I was saying before about why we live in occult times, is that the surfacing of this stuff, as a conspiracy podcast, you guys are aware, 5-6 years ago, outside of, say, 9/11, everything was just lurid, and no one would believe you. They'd be like, prior to Snowden, the idea that you'd have discussions about surveillance or what people are doing made you sound insane. And now it's like the actual president of the United States is tweeting about it. We live in times where these kind of things, both truths and falsehoods, are surfacing from where they were previously hidden.
And they're happening as everybody knows, they're happening like 1 second behind, right? And so that's another like weird thing about these changes that are happening. Our temporal senses change. We walk around thinking in status updates, which is completely crazy, and tweets, and trying to arrange our thoughts into sound bites and all this kind of stuff is very bizarre. And it's all sort of a document of the experience. And it is this really, like, to bring it to a spiritual level, it's this really fucked up form of Buddhism, right? Like where everybody's living in the present. I mean, maybe just 1 second behind. But it is this sort of like ultra mindfulness, which has really messed everybody up. Like we thought that Buddhism would be this like religion of peace, but this is what it looks like when the world is Buddhist. It looks like a fucking fight on Facebook. Like it's not fun. It looks like not being able to see something without saying, I am looking at this thing. That's what they teach you in mindfulness. And so there is I'm saying that to indicate there are spiritual conspiracies at play here. There are beings at play here that are doing things with us and distorting. And you don't have to think of them as spirit. Like if you don't have to think of them as like Poseidon and like Aphrodite or whatever. You can if you want to. But what you can think of them as currents, forces, sort of repetitions of patterns in culture that show up and fuck us up. And so I think that there are things afoot, in these technologies that are deeply spiritual and deeply conspiring. And that's what
100%. And funnily enough, when you say giving people an out there, which I wouldn't give them, I think you should think of them as think of them as spiritual beings, because smarter people than you have, like
right.
Ouch. Jung, for instance, is like, no, the best. Honestly, the best interpretation of what I've been studying my entire life is that these things have an objective and separate reality, or oddly separate, complicatedly separate. And when you come to an interesting way of talking about, it's a kind of demonic Buddhism. We have available to us a synthetic, total religion, and it will feel synthetic in your mouth if you do it. So mindfulness in Google, this kind of, and the opportunity that the false promise of a digital future and so on, every component of what would otherwise be a coherent analog spiritual path is available, and it is supremely Gnostic. It is literally the sin of the demiurge to create a synthetic version of the numinous to trap people. And so when Connor's saying maybe think about these things as spirit beings, like, well, here's some I prepared earlier. Like we actually have a map for how we navigate. There is a, let's science it up a bit. There's an extra dimensional component to how complex this terrain is.
I wonder, so because I've had the conversation with people about how, you know, if it's possible that the brain works, that it's kind of like, as long as you organize things in a certain pattern, it's going to come up with the same abilities or something like that. Like the idea that your iPhone could be just, you know, enslaved in this case, somehow suffering away and somehow conscious. I wonder if the internet couldn't, you know, somehow be becoming self-aware and, you know, but you always assumed it would be malevolent if it ever did become self-aware, but maybe these leaks and all this stuff showing us the different layers of control is like the internet fighting back.
I mean, if it has an awareness, it has its own agenda. Like it may not be malevolent, but this is what Elon Musk says about AI. Like you'd be, even though kind of like what Connor said about the singularity, it's bullshit. It relies on a false model of consciousness in the brain. But you can, and we already have developed things that are so technologically sophisticated that they can be proxy people to within, 95% of what a real human could be. And once you get into that territory, you're dealing with something that may, by definition, and no other organism has a morality that matches humans in the organisms we see that do appear to have them. So why would a being that approximates self-consciousness to such a degree that it's almost equivalent have the same kind of moral code that we would?
It'd be totally different. I mean, I like calling those things artificial stupidity. It's not very intelligent. Like why do we call it artificial? And it may not even be. I mean, lots of things can be intelligent. I get that, like equations themselves have their own sort of, way of playing themselves out that may look in some ways to be alive, all that kind of stuff. But it's like you don't. The mistake is that the computer is conscious, but it's actually if you create a golem and you write the sort of letters on its forehead and it springs to life, the letters in Hebrew on its forehead and it springs to life. It's not the letters that did it, and nor is it the statue. Right. It's an intention and universal attention. It's the way that if I plant an acorn in the ground, the soil forces, the rain, the sun, the conditions of the spinning earth all notice. It's a moment of attention. And then suddenly this attention becomes a living being in its own way. And so, that's why this idea like, well, I'll just, type these numbers into a computer and suddenly, like all those zeros and X's, I Scarlett Johansson's now my girlfriend. Like, it's just like, it's crazy, like that movie Her. Like, it's like this crazy view of how things work. And that's not it at all. So
we've also rendered over to, and, with the caveat that neurodivergence is what it is, but we've basically rendered over to the people who are least adept at understanding human emotion. I'm thinking of people like Peter Thiel, who is just way up the spectrum, right? These are the people who are going to build things that are actual humans. Like it's like you found, from a personality perspective, people least qualified to determine what is and isn't a human, and said, "Yeah, go build some humans." You go, I don't know if this is going to work that well.
I've never met one, but I think this would be good. It's like it's like how when politicians create legislation around sex, I'm like, you guys literally have the most distorted, worst sexualities in the world. You're not even allowed to say you like pussy. Like you like, and you're going to make a law about how people should interact sexually. This is preposterous.
Yeah, it almost seems like I was going to expand on Darren's thing about the internet, like just like what you were saying, Connor, about intention and combined intention and attention. Like, maybe that's one of the reasons why the polarization is getting worse before it sort of peaks and then hopefully comes back to the middle, is everybody's throwing their intention in there and it's just sort of expanding it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it expands and contracts back to the middle, by the way. I think it stretches out and breaks, and we have a very real opportunity to claim the middle for ourselves because no one's in it at the moment.
Can we get that? How do we get our hands on that?
I was wondering about that too. Though,
we can do yet.
You don't think the middle's expanding as well, or is it really just? Because I used to think that there was a bigger middle growing as well, but now
is there any good being in the middle? What good's the middle if no one else is there?
Well, I don't think
my taint is really sensitive.
Then then you're just getting rocks thrown at you from both sides.
Yeah, I don't think the time is now for that. You kind of, this is not the point in the timeline where we go back to rational discussion, but we will have an opportunity when it turns out that heading very far left and very far right is unsatisfying to be able to do it. And the reason you do it is your worldview is incomplete, and you're better off having sane discussions with people who think differently to you, or you will learn things from it. And at the moment, we're not learning from each other at all. We've decided we know exactly what everything in the universe works like, and this is exactly what we should do. And anyone who disagrees is gone. And that's really bad. The interplay between different perspectives and personality types has been a huge part of how we have built out discourse in the West. Like, we can argue, and I think correctly, that it was almost a monoracial polyvalence, but it was more polyvalent than you would find anywhere else. And now the goal is to actually get a genuine polyvalence and have people talk and learn from each other. And it is just too toxic to do that at the moment, and that will end. And we just need to be ready to race to the middle when that happens.
And I think one of the ways to see this middle that he's talking about, I mean, it's not, it almost, I almost don't even like the word middle or center here. It's something else. But it's not just between those poles. It's a tension, maybe between them, but it's not just something that's between them. So it's like, I often piss people off because for lots of reasons, but they'll chime in on Twitter and be like, well, what you don't realize is blah, blah. And I'm always like, I don't value disagreement. Like, I'm not interested in disagreement. And people like, what, you can't hear views that you don't agree with? And I'm like, it's just not productive to me, because we're already on a playing field where someone's right and someone's wrong. Now, of course, and you've probably heard it 10 times on this podcast already, where I've called people stupid and wrong and blah, 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 blah. However, the ideal stance for me, and one I try to take in my life when I'm a little more clear, is like, there's no urgency to right and wrong. It actually offers very little. What matters instead is taking an interest, really taking an interest. So when Gordon's talking about talking to people that you disagree with, or that you are that have different views than you, or whatever, what I suspect he means, and what I hope for in this, is not you have someone like Bill Maher talking to Milo, or like Joe Rogan talking to Milo is actually probably a better example, right? Where they appear to disagree, but in fact, like, they come at each other sort of and maybe they don't even appear to disagree, but they come at each other like oppositionally. So they're in the same current, so they're doing the same thing. So they basically have the same worldview. The worldview just contains different content every once in a while. What really would be fucking crazy is if, and this is some of the work that I try to do, I know Gordon does, I know you guys do in your podcast, is you find people that are just into shit you do not understand or believe, you can't contain, that is beyond you, that is bizarre. Have conversations with those people. Meet those people, because those are the worldviews that really will start to infuse things. It's not about getting in arguments with people that you don't like, or who, that's more the same, essentially.
Like, when I say the middle, I don't mean a debate chamber where the left and the right get its edges rounded off, and you just end up back with Tony Blair. That's where I go to steal. Like, I go to steal because I don't have all the answers, and someone else may. So in that sense, and that happens with the interaction. It's not, the middle isn't the halfway point where you kind of put half blue drink and half red drink into a glass and go middle. It's that it's a marketplace of ideas, and we're missing that. And that's where I go to steal. I steal from the marketplace.
Yeah, and that urgency of half red, half blue, or that urgency of argument, doesn't it reveal how deeply people believe in original sin? If I think that I need to be right in an argument, that it's really important to present the correct view and not the interesting view, not the curious view, not the developed view, or even the fantastic view, I'm showing how much I think, how urgent I think it is to avoid the sort of fall from grace, how urgent I think it is to redeem myself constantly. And, you might instead just meet people that are fucking wackos. Come hang out with me while I'm yelling at the sky and holding my Cypress book, I guess, or whatever. And that, again, is related to this chapter, this being invincible chapter, which also comes complete with a really, from the outset, just like intense, crazy looking ritual that you can do, where that it extends from that when people are making gestures and doing moves that just seem out of whack, that just seem so, but take an interest in it and something happens,
I'll come yell at the sky with you. Next time you're in Alberta, we should have done it then.
I know. We could have all cloud busted together.
Graham's big into the cloud busting.
I'm down with it.
Or actually, he's more interested in chemtrail busting.
I just like Kate Bush's video had an effect on me when I was like 15.
Oh, you know what? Maybe Elton John's drum solo gets you into the club.
Yeah.
That's probably good.
Yeah, I had a pretty spiritual experience with that, yeah.
Well, it's funny how before podcasts, it was music. Music was kind of that thing you could take with you, and it was, physical. You could hear it instead of just reading it or,
I think it's still important. Music?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's too bad the marketplace is so polluted with crap.
I think it's better. I think it's better now than having, remember years ago we were forced to listen to the same stuff unless you go home with your records and play your own stuff. Now it's quite a bit different now.
I think one of the things because I left Australia when I was 21 and a half and came back at 35. The radio hasn't changed, and it reminds me of what you were just saying. So if I'm just pootling about town to town, picking up different things, and I have the radio on, my goodness, how many times in an hour do I have to hear Justin Bieber? Like it's the same, and it's awful. And you think, wow, I remember when you would have to like hold out and wade through garbage to hear a particular track that you want to go, it's on. The reception is terrible. Why would you do this? And I think that's happened to everything. Like it is so awful out there, the majority of it. Everything kind of has that, long tail, fat head shape to it. And comics have been ruined. Music has been ruined, but it's been ruined on a macro level that just means you have to go on that quest. And funnily enough, it becomes more rewarding when that happens. It is that almost like a Zen in the art of motorcycle maintenance search for quality. Like, what is good? Why is this, like, how is this good and that isn't? And you end up in some very metaphysical places when you try to navigate Drek to find those more profound moments.
Yeah, it's really cool when you talk about it that way. I mean, it's, one of those trade-offs that we have is more people can create music, can create movies, can create fiction, can create pornography, can create podcasts, all that. So like the fact that we can all create it makes it all available, but we are really just still learning how to deal with the fact that we can create it. We don't need other people's money to create it in the same way anymore. And what does that mean for our ability to choose what we like? And so I love the idea of like, you have to go on a quest to create your own taste in a way that it was really, if you want, but really taste was selected for you in a lot of other ways. I mean, it was curated a lot of times by people who really, when I was a kid, I would watch 120 minutes. You guys remember that? It was like this MTV, like underground music, and you have to stay up till fucking midnight to watch it. It was 2 hours long, and they would play like these videos they would only play once. And that was really cool. And so it was being that kind of presentation being selected for me, you know. But it was like scraps. It was like, well, this is all I got, you know. So like, I better like this like new REM song because it's the only music that's remotely weird, you know. So then I went beyond that and started listening to punk music, going to record stores and getting 7 inches, and going to shows and who's the opening band, getting catalogs, all that kind of stuff before the internet. However, most people don't have that experience, and so now people are having to do that for themselves again. Like, they've got to wade through and find, and, you know, and it's this weird task, you know. Everything relates back to this weird thing Gurdjieff said about, like, you have to create your own soul, you know, and like, that's, you know, down to that level of like, what bands am I going to like now? You have to create your own soul on that level, you know?
Yeah. And it's also another one of these step awakenings that I've been having. Like, you know, I mean, I knew that sort of the mainstream music scene was sort of, you know, controlled. I mean, you kind of had your artist sort of pushed down your throat, and unless you wanted to step away from that and go elsewhere. But now I feel like I'm opening up to more and more of this esoteric Hollywood or occult Hollywood, where now I can't look at Hollywood the same. And it's like everything just sort of starting to peel away. Like, first it's music, and then it's, you know, whatever, the intelligence community and the government, and now it's even Hollywood, and it's like everything is seeming fake. I guess it seems to be like what Gordon was saying earlier about, you know, the Bill Nye metaphor. I feel like everything I look at now, and that's why these conversations are important to me, because even if it's just even Joe Rogan and Milo, it just seems more honest, and these seem more honest, and there's not a big agenda. It's just people, you know, shooting the shit about fairly important stuff.
Hollywood's a very good example of the, as you go on that awakening journey, everything tastes synthetic, and you look at it and go, I'm allergic to this now. I can't watch it. And the amount of TV shows over the last 5 years that I've abandoned because I just can't sit through it anymore. It's synthetic. It leaves a taste in my mouth, and it's not good. There's nothing. It's debased. There's nothing in it, and you know that there are things that can be uplifting rather than debasing. And you look at the Hollywood system and go, yes, not just intelligence communities, but corporate interests and just this ongoing attempt at effectively, you know, large scale mind control. And you go, I'm not into it. It doesn't work on me anymore. So why am I watching this?
Well, I love, like, because I live essentially in Hollywood, and, you know, I can see the Hollywood sign from where I live, and you know, one of the most amazing things about LA is everybody really owns the fakeness here, right? Like, women will proudly tell you that they've had their boobs done, you know. Other women, like, you go to Beverly Hills and they have, you know, their plastic surgery that makes them look like a cat, and they know that it looks that way, and they've chosen to do that. They're down with it. It's like a look, you know. People wear clothes that have tears in them, you know, that it costs them hundreds of dollars for a T-shirt. And the idea being, like, when you live in the sort of like manipulative dream factory, you're actually in some ways immune to the garbage of it. You're just like, no, I got it. I got this. This is me. It's this phony thing. I know it's phony. I just like the aesthetic. And that's why, like, when I'm watching one of the 8 million Gordon Ramsay shows, I'm like, I love this because it's nothing, you know? You should at least be able to do that. You should at least be able to love it because it's like shit, you know, and that you need that sometimes. Like, you have to love it because it's not really contributing anything to your life. It's the real problem is when you love it and it's and you're unaware of its phoniness, and it's really like getting into you, you know?
Yeah, sometimes I find I need that throwaway show, you know? Sometimes it's just good to kill a couple hours on the couch and just watch that, and you're not learning anything or focused on anything or worried about anything, and you can just kind of blah.
Escape, yeah.
Yeah, fall asleep on the couch watching bullshit.
I wasn't referring to Gordon Ramsay as much as I was referring to the Age of Ultron, basically normalizing a U.S. invasion of Ukraine.
Right.
Like that's set. That's, you know, they have their flying aircraft carrier thing, you know, essentially destroying but also saving this country that is clearly Ukraine. And you look at that and go, I'm not into this. Like, I know what you're doing.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was getting
at. I know what you're doing, and I'm not, like, this doesn't work on me anymore. I'm allergic to it. And that bit is the waking up that's happening as you kind of look across. Like, I don't know if any of you, obviously, I'm in another country, so we don't get that much Rachel Maddow, for instance. But when you see bits of it on YouTube or whatever, and you look at it and go, does anyone actually think this is reality anymore? Does anyone think that that's a real thing? And that's a waking up moment, and we're doing it. That's a night and day difference to, say, not even 5 years ago, 4 years ago. And in many respects, that's looking at this kind of collapse. Well, collapse is the wrong word.
Implosion?
I'm looking for something that's sort of like white-knuckled transition. But it's looking at it half full. Like, you go, this is what will happen. Whatever happens next, they have lost forever. And that's good. That's actually quite a good thing. That the only thing keeping Hollywood afloat is is kind of mining the depths of 60s comics. Like, that's basically it. Once that ends, you go, this needs to be repositioned because we have creative infrastructure to be doing things that could be better. But the whole world that these things are building towards appears to have been put on notice. So there's an opportunity there somewhere.
Yeah, have you guys seen The Arrival, or I think it's actually just Arrival, or is it The Arrival?
Yeah,
I tried to watch it a couple times, but I haven't.
Really? You didn't?
Okay. Well, I won't. It's hard to not talk about the ending. So
don't worry about that. Darren won't get to it.
I don't care. Yeah, it doesn't.
Gordon,
she's a ghost.
Anybody wants to jump past this part? I'm about to spoil something. So, I mean, this movie is a pretty miraculous movie. Now, you might think that it has all sorts of social, political problems, all that sort of stuff. Yet, we have a rather complex, I can't imagine it was the most high-budget science fiction movie. It was kind of lower end for something like that. Really complex storyline that really relates to language and time and all this kind of stuff. And I think that we are seeing, and interestingly enough, called The Arrival, right? and interestingly enough, also results in a sort of world peace is what happens at the end of the movie. There's conflict, and then there's this idea of language, a certain kind of language being transmitted into us so we can see the world in a completely different way and have a different relation to time and space. And all this stuff.
Like emojis?
Yes, just like exactly like an eggplant. And so
wait, what's the eggplant?
Yeah, I was just gonna say we gotta. That must be.
I don't think they use the same apps, Connor.
So peaches.
I like that they added the guy with the hand on his face.
So the spaceship in The Arrival is just a giant eggplant emoji. But basically, you have like this moment, right? Exactly what I think Gordon is talking about, where suddenly this bizarre thing came out, and it's so sealed so tightly with culture that is about an arrival of a new kind of language that will reveal new ways of interacting with each other, and extremely successful, out of the blue, bizarre movie. So that's what happens with movies and happens with art. They contain these weird sort of themes of what's happening culturally expressed, in a really interesting way. And I hope that sort of heralds a new age of making movies and stuff. So in some ways, I am really hopeful about what will happen.
Well, and that's part of magic as well, right? That creates this intention, and it creates this focus and this attention. And maybe it creates some reality. I mean, but then you've got the Hunger Games and all these other dystopian ones and alien invasion movies. So, how bad are those ones to our culture?
I guess it's Grant Morrison has that idea of the hypersigil. So, which is a term he used because when he was writing The Invisibles in the 90s, the stuff that he put his main character through kept happening to him.
Yeah, right.
So, he ended up with collapsed lungs in hospital and so on. And he kind of realized this is what was going on. Blood poisoning, nearly died. And he's decided to say, well, actually, in subsequent issues, I'm going to make sure everything happens to him is good and he gets lots of sex. and there is a interplay. Culture is a common surface between like us and the extra dimensional. So there is something performative in magic and all acts of creation such that they are different from each other, which is not much except in a few very specific circumstances. That means you are literally playing with fire. You are playing with Prometheus's fire when you create things. And as a result, there's an opportunity to kind of participate in, although I will say about Arrival, it is also one of those, it's almost Reaganite in its idea that there will be some kind of event that brings mankind together into a neoliberal dominated peace, because that's exactly what Reagan said. And you find that a lot with, but underneath that, given the fact that nothing comes out of Hollywood that doesn't kind of push that, underneath it, you find some very interesting ideas that they can kind of sneak through. It's a more intelligent contact in that way.
And as far as the sort of hypersigil, that goes back to our conversation about the internet that we were having before. I mean, it's really important to view these technologies and stuff that's sort of sigilizing for things. I mean, I don't think it's been successful, but in some ways I regarded for a long time the internet as a sigil for the Akashic record. We could create something so intensely preparatory and symbolic of being able to access all information all the time, everything that had ever happened. But like with most sigils, the trick is to not get trapped in the symbol, and that's what all these things are. I mean, that's what matter itself is. It's a symbol that you can get trapped in. I mean, it has its own reality too. I'm not just reducing it to that, but it can be something that you only see and you don't use to see.
Yeah, that's a good point. Hey, Gordon, I think it was one of your recent guests you were talking to, I think it was Jeff Kripal, maybe, about comparative religions and morality, and whether morality was an actual, how did you describe it, a construct in the universe? I found that really, really interesting, and whether there was good for, good and evil, or if it was just one's perception.
It's, so I think that happened. I mentioned that it came up in a conversation with Alex on Skeptico.
Oh, that's what it was.
Right. Yeah, and I also brought it up when Peter Lavender was last on, because he's, Peter's Peter, so he's like, there is none. The universe is a cold Lovecraftian place, probably. And the question of like whether the universe has a morality or not is it fundamental, like as a force in the universe, like gravity or spin or so on? And that's a kind of difficult case to make, and it depends on how you conceptualize the universe. I think of it as an evolving organism that exists for the experience of itself. So it probably has one, but it probably doesn't match mankind's one. That means that kind of, in a funny way, it adds additional responsibility. So there are two ways to think about morality in the universe. There's a kind of medieval Catholic one, which is there is an objective right and wrong, and if you move away from it, you will be punished, because there is the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do. The other option, if it doesn't exist as a category that we would recognize in the universe, it falls to us, and this is harder, it falls to us to actually have that morality. Otherwise, if you picture it as a light, there's no other light that we can see as far as it goes, and perhaps we are the moral sense organs or the nerves that are designed to experience how things move towards the good rather than the bad or the evil within the universe. And it's a really interesting kind of thing to roll around in your head rather than to try and work out what things to like. Does a molecule have a morality? Probably, but I don't think it's human. I don't think a molecule is vegetarian.
Maybe
it used to be, but now it's only eating grass-fed beef.
Yeah.
But I think I listened to that as well, and I thought about it a bit, and I just I thought about how, I would just take the stance that I do think love is a universal principle, and agree with Gordon on the with the, that the idea that when you scale up or down, the existence and reality of what that means is different for a bacterium than it is for a stone, than a plant, than a person. People have to eat plants. So what love is for a plant has to be different than what love is for a person, and what love is for angels and other beings has to be different than what it is for people. But I do think it is a sort of binding. Binding's not the right word. It's a generative thing, and so. But there's something also in what Gordon said, that the universe is evolving. So at some point, it's not going to be that anymore either. It's going to have its own. It's going to find its new and own principles. It's just that I find that to be the most useful place I can go. So right now, if I can think beyond love at some point, I'll do that. But right now, I just get too pissed off at people on Twitter. I'm a dick. To people, I get cranky, and when something small happens in my life, I become an asshole. So I'm still striving for that. Once I get to that, I'll tell you what's on the other side of it. But I don't know.
But does love necessarily conflate with morality? Because that was what Alex came back with, and I'm not. I think the whole thing probably runs on love, based on NDE experiences and mystic experiences across time and space and culture. I think that's.
It's a love machine.
I think that's a confident. It is. Well, it's not a love machine. It's a love organ. The love organism.
Oh boy.
So see, I don't
know if that. If that necessarily maps to is morality a thing, because love is far from moral.
Sure.
Love organs can be pretty immoral too.
Right. I think that I would say that the way that, it's a difficult way to put it, and it also sounds sort of scientific materialist in some weird way. But I would say that what is the sort of the underlying principle is the morality, and that we seek the existence of that morality. So we're really talking about God. Honestly, when we get into discussions like this, so it's more. I would view it almost spatially or an object way to even understand it. That is the content. There's not much outside of that. So that's what I would call the morality in the first place. Not so yeah. That's a weird answer, but that's best I can do.
That's okay.
I don't know. I feel like love and morality are tied together. I think that morality could come directly out of it. Like if you don't have love, then, or if you are in love, then isn't that moral automatically?
Well, you think of crimes of passion. Think of things we do when it manifests improperly or too strongly, or when you have it unrequited. So love is a force in the universe. But that's what I mean by it doesn't necessarily map to morality, because the things done in the name of love.
But then it's not really
quite there.
What about stalking? What if it's not reciprocal?
Stalking's fine.
Gordon's outside my house.
Whoa! Not saying anything about stalking.
Well, sure. It doesn't. You can do all sorts of horrible things in the name of love, right? It's the weird sort of back and forth. It's not a paradox exactly, but this weird sort of back and forth. So when you talk to I'm going to say it wrong, but I think it's Advaita Vedanta Buddhists, right? They're just like, it is what it is. Everything's perfect, right? And you're like, are you kidding me? Like things suck. Like I got to take action now. And then they respond like, what are you comparing it to? And you're like, well, my ideas of how things could be better, right? But your ideas are part of that whole construction as well. So they're in there as well. And so it's like, it's this sort of back and forth between everything's perfect and I must act now. And there's this sort of a tension and a back and forth between those things. I tend to err on the side of everything's perfect. However, and that is love, and however, we can't achieve that state. Maybe some the few bodhisattvas that have ever lived have achieved that state, but we can't really, for the most part, achieve that. So we strive for it as an ideal. And in that striving for it as an ideal, that's our morality, is the striving towards that.
Yeah, I like that.
There you go. Put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah. So I know we have to wrap it up here pretty soon. Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about the current events in occultism or anything like that?
Well, I was wondering, I'd asked Gordon on Twitter if Trump was a chaos magician. You know, he's always doing those crazy hand signals and shit. I feel like he's casting spells on people.
Yeah.
Or controlling or manipulating the universe.
I didn't see him at the last meeting, so I'm pretty sure he isn't. There's this particular period of time is awash with that kind of stuff. He does practice magic. I mean, I've had Mitch Horowitz on the show, and Trump is very much of the kind of American Hermeticism, think and grow rich, sort of positive thinking kind of stuff. Like that's his version of Christianity. He actually does have a magical system, right?
The law of attraction kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Not in that sort of world, in that kind of. Yeah, so he does have a magic. I don't think it's especially grimoiric, but it's what you tend to see when there are actual operant magicians where the evidence suggests that there are people who really know what they're doing. It doesn't tend to be the public figures themselves. They do tend to be at a lower level, and I think you see that. The evidence of that is. The odd ritual components of something like 9/11. I don't think Dick Cheney is like a Thelemite, but you will find in that kind of spooky corners of the deep state that all the stuff that they were working on through the Cold War and so on that they allegedly stopped working on, they didn't. They found that there are ways that this could provide probabilistic enhancements that they use in conjunction with their other nefarious schemes. But Trump himself, no, he's just. He's acutely billionaires are kind of high functioning damaged people that you kind of have to be to become one, and so he is a form of magician, no question. He's unbelievably good at falsing towards accuracy. Like he plays the media and Twitter like an absolute master, and he does kind of have a notion that if you kind of think it will manifest, and that's part of his spirituality. So he falls technically into the category of a magician, but not, I would say, a chaos magician.
He's like an energon cube, right? It's like you find somebody that is like has this specific like vibration of magical energy, and you just fucking plug them in and let it power the system. You know, like he's being sucked dry. You ever see a picture of the president when they start, when they end?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's 4 or 8 years. Like, it looks like they stared into the dark fucking crystal. I mean, this is just like so creepy. And there's that picture of Hillary, of course, after the campaign, where she just like it looked like they just sucked her dry. And it is like these people they have this magical power in some way. He definitely has it. I mean, if you look at the course of his life. And they just fucking plug him in, you know, make sure he's like the double A battery, you know. And I think that's and he's of course doing his own. That doesn't mean he has no agency of his own. He's of course doing his own stuff as well. But I think, right, like as Gordon says, like the people that really sort of know the shit that they're doing, it's something a lot more problematic than Donald Trump.
Is there anything, what about getting to more of the negative side of that, like the spirit cooking, pedophilia kind of stuff? Have you guys been following that or taking any of that seriously?
I think after, obviously, because I just did 8 years in Britain, the idea that there isn't...
you said that like prison. I just did 8 years. I just did 8 years down in Britain. Yeah. No, it's pretty rough.
See my tax. Yeah, my delicious British prison wine. It's kind of open and shut that there is this sort of child trafficking and child sex at a super elite level in the kind of Anglo-American world. We saw that with the Franklin scandal. We see that repeatedly in Britain as to whether or not. I mean, that poor little pizza place. That stuff came straight out of Red than the emails, right? So yes, there is clearly something there, and I think when you're talking about Abramovich and spirit cooking and the people who are there, you have antechamber cultural spaces where if you were a normal person and you go to that, you go, this is not great. This is not my scene. Good luck to you. I'm off. But if you kind of, it's like getting anyone else into a club. If you can sort of cope with that, there is the VIP room. And if what we saw glimpsed there, and I don't think that story's done being told. And I think, funnily enough, about maybe half of what the establishment, because I was about to say Democrats, but I think the reason this stuff isn't out yet is because a lot of Republicans are caught up in it too, and he needs his House to do whatever he needs to do. But this is the sort of Damocles that is hanging over their head, and we haven't heard the rest of this. We haven't heard the rest of the story. It's why the co-intel has been so strong, and yeah, so. Catherine Fitz puts it at slightly over 50% that we will actually get this information out this year, and that will be a wild day.
And that when that happens,
we should podcast that shit. We'll get together. We'll live broadcast the fucking shit.
Well, what I was going to say is when that happens, like, be completely vigilant, because as a sex worker, I know what the phony cries of human trafficking are leveled against sex workers constantly, used to legislate our sexualities, used to legislate what we can do, the fact that people can't pay to have sex with someone or get paid to have sex. I mean, it is absolutely bonkers. And so much of the legislation focuses on this sort of like red herring of sex trafficking. And the same thing with the occult. It's like, how much was the occult demonized because of these ideas of these, child sex pornography, McMartin preschool, someone floating in the air and shoving a butcher knife up some kid's ass, like, even though there were no marks, it's like all this crazy stuff, this hysteria that is used, at once to mask what's actually going on, to make us all think that that's a joke, which in most of the popular culture cases, it was a joke, it was bullshit. But to demonize the occult and sexuality at once. And that's what will happen when this comes out. It will be leveraged to root out everything, to legislate and control people's access to the occult, and to control and legislate people's access to sex. So it's be careful and vigilant when that happens.
I've not thought about it that way yet. That's kind of scary. It's a good thing you brought that up. No, I mean, really, it's just, I've just been thinking the other way, that it'll be good for it to.
No, it'll be good to round up the kiddie fiddlers and throw them in a pyre and burn them, because I think Washington will be quite quiet. Like, you honestly would be looking at up to half the House if some of these numbers are correct, because it's been used for decades as control file material and everything else. So it is the red button, and it's very interesting when you kind of realize that before Milo got booted. I remember late last year or something, he was going to give a talk about Pizzagate, and he got up and said, you can find the video on YouTube, and he said, I've just got a call from the White House, and obviously that is his former employer, Bannon. Who else would it be? And he said, not yet. That's interesting.
Wow.
So that's one of those pieces that you go, this is the sort of Damocles. And if you take that idea and you start to look at the irrational behavior of people like, on both sides, so Republican, Democrat, and like really insane stuff, like what McCain's doing and so on, and going after Sessions and all this kind of stuff, you can't help but wonder how much of that is trying to front run or prevent the eventual drop of the Damoclesian sword. And it's gonna, if that happens, that we're talking about how people won't move their mindsets, and they're getting the kind of ice cream headache of I thought being a Democrat was edgy and nice and so on. You wait till this sweeps up people on both sides, and for people who are out there listening, kind of psychologically prepare you for the possibility that people that you may have even marched for are not what they seem.
Yeah. So Connor, do you think that some of these, like you hear about the 1,500 arrests so far in sex trafficking, and I think what you're trying to say is that's not necessarily all centered around pedophilia. It's also, they can expand that to combine things that we would not as normal people think should be clamped down on, right? Like whether it's prostitution or porn or whatever, so some sort of, anything but pedophilia, really.
Clip-on nipple rings are outlawed.
Right. And let's also, this isn't, just to make a distinction, in some cases this is pedophilia, but really what's happening is child molestation and child abuse, right? Pedophiles are people who are singularly, as their main sexual attracted to children, and they don't have really any choice in some sort of way. Of course, they commit child molestation and all that sort of stuff, but there's something different going on. They're pretty rare. These are people who are, what we're talking about are people who ritually abuse children for specific reasons, whether it's just fraternity or whether it's to create magic effects. Maybe those two things are the same, that sort of stuff. So first, even this line, I'm pointing it out just to say, what's that going to do to people who are sex offenders already, who are struggling with their sexuality, or who have been punished for being a 19-year-old who had sex with a 16-year-old girlfriend? So the language around sex offenders is going to go crazy. The language around people who are sex workers, who are accused of being trafficked victims when in fact they decided, I wanted to be an escort. That's going to go crazy. Porn. You didn't have the paperwork for this one person that was in this one scene you did 10 years ago. We're going to shut you down because that person must have been trafficked, right? All this kind of stuff is going to go through the roof. And the same thing for the occult, because these people are doing stuff in the name. I mean, you look at that fucking story for the secret police force in California under Kamala Harris. That was this story. It was huge. It should have been a huge story. They said they were thousands of years old. Nobody gave a shit. It came out for 2 seconds. When this stuff starts getting unearthed and a lot of people are implicated, you're going to have the people in power, as always, trying to seize it to control us instead of fucking cleaning up their shit.
Yeah.
So just be careful.
Well said. Good way to end it. You guys are both...
Be careful.
That's right. You guys are both on
They're
Twitter,
coming to
right?
take your wands.
Yep, we're both rarely off Twitter.
Yeah. We will definitely put both of those in the show notes.
Nice one.
Welcome back to Australia, Gordon.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me back on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always fun talking to you guys. Connor, thanks for coming back on. Thanks for suggesting this. It's been a slice. And have fun at your party tonight or whatever you're getting up to. What do you... I assume party. I don't know.
Screaming at the clouds, yelling at the
I just picture you as
sky.
having a fun life. Partying all the time and going out.
On the outside, if I weren't an international sex symbol, it would be the most boring life in the world.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Right on, guys. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Great. Thanks.
When do you reckon this one's going to be out?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Cool.
Yeah, 2 weeks
Right.
Friday.
Yeah.
That's a day I don't have to do a blog post.
Perfect. You're going to have a long weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Awesome.
guys. Thanks again for coming
Thanks
on.
very much.
Thanks,
See ya.
guys.
Okay,
Bye.
take care.
And that was our chat with Connor and Gordon, longtime friends of the show. Fun to have them on at the same time.
That was awesome. That was great.
Well, like on Twitter, I was like, because Connor suggested it. He didn't say that they were buddies or whatever. And I was like, so I made the Twitter message group and I was like, hey guys, this is Connor, this is Gordon. And then they spent like the next 2 days just fucking with me. So
and all you had to do is go back and listen to one of Rune Soup's podcasts.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
I got no time for any more podcasts. I'm trying to squeeze in Bill Burr.
It's so hard, I know.
I'm trying to squeeze in this Bill Burr show. Everyone says it's good.
Nah, I tried it.
No?
I'm not digging it.
No?
No.
I'll give it a whirl.
But that's the same thing. I don't have the time either. It's crazy.
Oh, it's tough. This week I'm catching up on my back catalog a bit because we listened to that No Agenda the day it came out, but I mean, it can be tough sometimes.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you motherfuckers that stick with us.
Totally. Like that
really
really makes me appreciate that.
Yeah, and if you do appreciate these long, uninterrupted chats about whatever we like, check out grimerica.ca/support.
And there's going to be a ton of notes on this one, I can tell already, like as I was going through it. So there'll be lots of links. Everything we chatted to those guys about will be in the show notes and little
check all that shit out. Sign up for the newsletter. Of course, if you guys don't remember from a couple shows ago, that bonus episode from the cabin in the woods is only available via newsletter subscription. As soon as you sign up for the newsletter, Justin will email you the link instantly.
That's seriously not a show. It was a bit of a shit show. We don't want to put it out to everybody.
It's a bonus
seriously,
shit show.
It's not for new listeners.
I might cut some of that. I might actually edit part of it.
That was when I started getting pretty frustrated with a bunch of baked guys trying to podcast. I was like, fuck. You guys were laughing at me at one point. I'm like, oh, fuck.
We turned on you. You're like, I should have just kept my mouth shut. All right, guys. Check out support. Grimerica.ca/support. Sign up for a monthly if you can. Do a one-time donation if you can. Grimerica.ca.
You don't say ham, you say spam, spam, spam.